Julia was born when her mother was 33 years old. It was a long-awaited child, whom everyone loved from the moment of conception. "Barry, I'm pregnant," Selena told her husband. Well, finally, he hugged her. From that moment, when everyone found out that a daughter and granddaughter would soon be born, Selena began to be watched and cared for very closely. Up to that point, Barry and Selena had tried many times to have a child, but nothing had worked out. Not that there had been miscarriages or anything, but not even a pregnancy. "How are you feeling?" Grandma asked Selena all the time. "Fine," she answered. "Nothing's bothering you?" The old lady was worried that something might happen. "No, if something happens, I'll be sure to tell," Selena assured everyone. Almost the whole pregnancy the girl went well. Nothing bothered her. Her stomach did not hurt. Everyone helped her as much as they could. A couple of times at the end of the term she had high blood pressure, so she had to go to the hospital. Otherwise, everything went well. "Oh, I heard Barry in the night." "Darling, what's wrong?" "I heard my husband moaning." "I think I've got it all started." She held her stomach. For this occasion they had everything ready. The bags were packed. The car was standing near the entrance. All that was left was to pack everything, get in, and drive to the hospital, which they did. "That's it. Come on, love." He left her alone. "That's it. I'll call you." She kissed him and went into the maternity ward. If the beginning was rapid, then everything calmed down. "I'm in pain," cried Selena. "Nothing, Barrett." "Barrett," soothed her midwife. But the girl could not tolerate. She asked to be put anesthetized or something else, just to relieve this terrible pain. Everything started very long. The pain was so stretched out that Selena thought she would just die here on this labor chair. But when the baby's head came through, her whole body just slipped out of her. And immediately there was a relief that could not even be expressed in words. Selena looked at her baby and couldn't believe she'd done it. "Julia," she stroked her head. "Congratulations, Mommy," the doctor told her. "Thank you," exhaled Selena. In a few hours she was already in the room. They brought her daughter to be fed. It was all so unusual and unfamiliar. The girl was born at 4 in the morning. At this time, Selena did not call her husband because she did not want to wake him up and disturb him. But when the morning came, she didn't spare him. "Barry, you become the father of a beautiful baby girl," she said into the phone. "Darling, thank you for your daughter," he told her. And by lunchtime, the young husband was at the hospital window. He was smiling, looking at his daughter. And then, during the day, all the other relatives began to pull up: mother, grandmother, mother-in-law. All of them wished only health to this new person who was born. "When will you be discharged?" her mother asked her. "They promised the 3rd day," Selena said. "I see what you mean. They wanted to go to their apartment to clean it." On the 3rd day indeed, Selena and her daughter were discharged. Around the maternity hospital met all the same relatives. After that, they decided not to bother the young mother, to let her settle in a little. "And I'll probably go with you," the grandmother said. Okay, Selena was fine with everyone else going too. Yes, she had a baby, but in the hospital she complained that she was 30 years old, but it was her first child, and she didn't know what to do with it. They helped her give birth, and then just threw the baby away, and that was it. She's already resented it. So now she's decided she's going to do it herself. "Barry, please put the kettle on and make some unsweetened porridge," she asked her husband. "Now give me 1 minute," the young man told her, then went to the kitchen, rattled the dishes, and then returned with a plate of freshly made porridge. "Here, thank you," thanked his wife. "Aren't you tired?" he asked her. "Not too tired," she admitted frankly. Selena really was not very tired because there were so many helpers around. "Well, my favorite daughter," Selena liked to talk to her when no one was home. "Do you want me to read you a book?" After these words, she would take in her hands fairy tales. While her mother read to her daughter, she would lie there and look at her. It was immediately clear that this was a curious child. All the relatives came daily to Selena because it was the only child in their family. "Aren't you tired?" Barry often asked her in the evenings. After bathing and putting the child to bed, "It is a pleasant fatigue," his wife answered him. "I'm glad for that you don't complain like so many other mamas." Her husband kissed her. "It was always like that." The older Julia got, the more curious she became. Where did this come from? What is this? She asked her grandmother when she visited her. Here, look, she told everything calmly. She had nowhere to hurry. Interestingly, the girl liked to climb through her grandmother's closets. In them stood different boxes, and in them were jewelry, brooches, beads, earrings, rings. All this girl poured out on the floor. She liked to dress up. In general, Julia spent a lot of time with her grandmother. Selena went to work. The girl had to leave her with someone, so the grandmother agreed because she did not want to give her to the early kindergarten. Thank you, Mom. Selena came by tonight. It's my pleasure, she hugged her daughter. Grandma taught the little girl a lot of things. They cooked dumplings together, chopped cabbage, cooked cold soup. Julia was interested in everything. Why is this picture hanging here? Granddaughter asked her grandmother. It's a picture from a fairy tale, the woman began to tell. Which one? Sat down and prepared to listen to her granddaughter. And why is it here? The insistent girl asked. For beauty. Isn't it beautiful? The woman was surprised. Beautiful, agreed her granddaughter. So let it hang. The grandmother always diverted this conversation. Selena tried to spend a lot of time with her daughter. She and Barry went to the movies every weekend, not forgetting to take the little girl with them. They spent a lot of time together as a family. Would you come this weekend? Barry's mother asked them. Of course, they were used to getting together like this. Her husband's father had passed away a long time ago, and Selena didn't have a father either, so they didn't leave their mothers behind. Why don't I have grandfathers? Julia often asked. They happen to be in heaven, Grandma said sadly. It's a pity. We would go for walks with them. Julia was a little girl, but very sensible. Often staying with her grandmother, they learned poems, so the little girl's memory was perfectly developed. Already in a year, at New Year's matinees, she could tell long poems. Everything was good, little girl. Sit, do not sit at home, but in the garden to go to the garden must go. As then on the weekend came Selena home to his mother. It is a pity to give such a little girl, although Julia was already 3 years old. For relatives, she will always remain a little girl. It's okay, let her go. There are guys there socializing, Selena said. She understood that her mother could sit with her for as long as she wanted, but she had to enter society. Yeah, I agree, Olivia sighed. And so the day came when Julia had to go to kindergarten. The first day was difficult. The girl came to kindergarten normally. She did not cry, did not ask to go home. But when we went for a walk to the plot, she took the big stick and just went home. We lived close by. Barry was getting ready for work. He was shaving in the hallway when he heard a knock on the door. Where are you coming from? He looked at his daughter with frightened eyes. I'm going home, Julia said in a businesslike manner. No, Terry, that won't do. He gathered himself and took the child back to the daycare center. Oh, thank you for not panicking. The teacher thanked him. No way, I know my daughter, he smiled. I can't figure out who's missing, she said to Barry. That's it, watch the kids. I've got to run, he said. And then he left. After that, there were no more incidents at the daycare center. Julia was on her best behavior. Well, how is my daughter here? Asked the mother from the teacher. All is well, but just does not give children to learn poetry, complained the woman. What do you mean? Selena didn't understand. I put notes in the lockers in the evening, and she takes them out of there, learns everything, and then, as the smartest at the party alone tells everything, said the teacher. It's so clear she can read, so she can't learn. Her grandmother taught her to read a long time ago. That's what I'm talking about. The kindergarten worker shook her head. Let's hope that this is a transitional period, and soon everything will get better, hoped the mother. Indeed, the further Julia went to the daycare center, the better things got. The girl spent more and more time at her grandmother's house. Together they went to the garden, made beds there, planted them. When there were the first sprouts, they thinned them out, then weeded them. And at the end of the summer, when the whole harvest was gathered, it was collected in bags and lowered into the pit. Fa, exhausted, imitated a little girl grandmother. The surrounding only laughed at her. Oh, so young and already so tired, clapped on the sides of the grandmother. They spent time together very often. While her mother was pursuing her career, Julia was with her grandmother all the time. We should go to my homeland, Olivia once said. How? her granddaughter asked. She had told her many times, but Julia had never been there. Would you take me with you? The girl looked with such eyes that it was hard to refuse. At the weekend, they went to the bus station, took a bus there, and went to the place where the woman was born. And who lives there now? All the way the granddaughter asked questions. No one, just a house left, sighed Olivia. Why did it stay there? The granddaughter wondered. It's just that everyone has gone to town, so it's just sitting there, the grandmother tried to explain. And what will we do there? Asked the next question the girl. Nothing. We'll warm the house, see what's in the vegetable garden, go to the bathhouse, and in the evening we'll go back. Olivia told her the plan for the day. Yes, a lot to do, shook her head like an adult Julia. A lot, sighed Grandma. They would arrive, do all the things the woman had talked about before. After that, they washed in the bathhouse and then drank delicious tea with honey. Well, back? Asked the grandmother. Ah, shouted the girl. And again they were shaking in the bus. It was time to graduate from kindergarten, and again all the relatives were here, next to the girl. Mom, Dad, grandmothers congratulated her on the first completed step in her life, or rather the past step. School was ahead, but Julia was not afraid of it. She was waiting for her to come to the classroom and sit at the desk. Are you ready? Mom and Dad were standing in the hallway. The grandmothers were coming to the line. Yes, she nodded her head. Good riddance then, her father pushed her toward the door. They arrived in the schoolyard and the grandmothers were already there. Everyone was in a good mood, congratulating their child for going to school for the first time. I promise you that I will study well, the girl said to her relatives. And we'll help you, they said. Well, I think you and I will often have to do our lessons together. Olivia was sure of it. She loved her grandmother, and she loved her grandmother back. The first bell rang and the children went to their class. Dear first graders, the teacher said the first word to them, I wish you a bright road. After the class hour was over, the boys poured out into the schoolyard. Today it was already possible to go home. To me, the grandmother looked at her granddaughter because she knew that her parents had to go to work. Yes, Julia loved to spend time with her most favorite person, so she always enjoyed going to visit her. Her grandmother told her granddaughter often the same story, how she was little, how she came into the world, what she did. Olivia was born in the distant 1933. She lived happily with her parents. Nothing said that there would be something terrible. But the war began. The parents went to the front, and the girl was sent to an orphanage because she was very small. But when she was 7 years old, there was a fire in the institution. Everything burned, including all the personal files and documents. They made new documents for the children, where their age was put on their site. That's when I was 5 years older, because I was tall and strong, Olivia said. And then there was a war, her granddaughter asked her. Yes, but it did not come to our town. We were only evacuated, continued to tell her grandmother. And what happened next was interesting to the girl. She studied in the 5th grade. They began to pass the theme of the Great Patriotic War. To us in the city, evacuated a whole factory. It used to be on the territory of Ukraine, and in September it was brought to us, Olivia recalled. Wow, and how it was rebuilt again, asked the girl. I can't tell you that, because I don't know, but it was built very quickly, that's for sure. And after that, both old and young went to work there. Grandmother immersed herself so much in memories that it seemed she was not here at all. And you worked there too? The girl was amazed. Of course, together with my mother, we, when it was possible, went home. But mostly, we were always at the production. They worked in several shifts then. So many people just spent the day and night there. Many people had no shoes. It was impossible to walk. There were iron shavings on the floor. You had to protect your feet somehow. And if you walked in the same shoes, both on the street and indoors, you wouldn't have enough felt boots, my grandmother recalled. Wow, you were a child. Sat and looked out the window of Julia. Grandmother never said anything like that, and Mom too. That's nothing, we kids who worked there. Sometimes we couldn't even reach the machine, but we had to. We put the crates, and so we stood there all day long. Cried the woman. Apparently she remembered something. Tell me something else, my granddaughter asked. What to tell? Times were hard. There was nothing to eat, nothing to wear. We struggled as we could. Wiped her tears grandmother. Don't be so upset. It was all a long time ago. Julia pitied her. Okay, baby girl, hugged her grandmother. There was a very close bond between them. They sat on the bed, hugging, Olivia still sobbing, remembering how and what she'd had as a child. This story made Julia's mind reel, and she decided to write a report on it because it involved her grandmother. What are you thinking about? Her grandmother leaned over her. Nothing. I want to write a story about you and tell it to my classmates in class, disclosed her granddaughter. Okay, Olivia agreed. They took out the pictures, which for some reason had been in the grandmother's reticule, and began to look at them. Where are all these people? Asked her granddaughter. Who is where? The grandmother was evading the answer. How I would like to have a big family, said the girl. And you have a small one? The woman was surprised and laughed. Not as big as I would like, not even a grandfather. She curved her lips as if she wanted to start crying. It's all right, yes, that's how it happened in our lives, shook her head grandmother. And where did he die in the war? Asked the girl. I don't want to talk about that. Olivia turned away from her. Well, and then someday will you tell me? Looked her granddaughter in the eyes. Maybe, the woman promised and changed the subject. No, I don't want to talk about it. The grandmother started talking about school and what happens in it. Why, I need to know about your business, Olivia wondered. I want to know about your childhood, how your mother was born. I'm interested in all that, Julia insisted. Well, maybe someday I'll tell you all about it, or maybe your mother will tell you, she said. Okay, you think I'm still young, don't you? Guessed the girl. Everything is possible, and now let's go to the kitchen. I'll show you how to start the dough for pancakes. Grandma taught her granddaughter different wisdom, which will be useful later in ordinary life. Julia already knew how to take a hook, needles, to make any kind of dough, cooking, and all this at the age of 10. No, I cannot do it. Could not stir the girl flour into the liquid so that there were no lumps. Nothing. Washington was not built at once, Grandma said calmly. They made the dough, made pancakes, then Grandma made morsels, and they were full. Well, shall we go and lie down for a while? The old lady asked her. Okay. They went to the room that used to be Mom's room. There was a TV set in it, but it didn't work well, and the same picture hung on the wall. Can you tell me the story? Grandma asked her granddaughter. This picture has haunted me since childhood, smiled the girl. Julia was still chattering when she heard her grandmother already sniffling. She covered her eyelids too, deciding to take a little nap. That's how they slept, cuddled together. Grandma was the first to wake up, realizing that they had been asleep for more than 3 hours. No wonder, first so much to cut, then not so much to sleep, she said to herself. Baba Olivia, Julia called out to her when she woke up. What's up, my dear? She peeked into the room. You know, I was just thinking, that's where my daddy works, she said. Yes, so he is the only one in town, stroked her on the head grandmother. So it has been functioning in our town for many years. It was such an interesting topic that the girl decided to ask her parents about it at home. Julia was so impressed with the different stories today that she wanted to learn more and more. She herself started reading about the local city-forming enterprise, what it does, why it was evacuated here, who works here, and other things. Everything was interesting. Daddy, it turns out that you work at such an enterprise, which helped people in wartime. She came home in the evening happy. Yes, did you know that? He was surprised. No, only today my grandmother told me, my daughter told him. Wow. And you were not taken on an excursion? He asked. They did, but they didn't tell me about it. Apparently they thought it was too early, she concluded. The girl was growing up. She remained very curious. She was interested in everything, especially in what was connected with the war. When she was in the 8th grade, she already knew a lot about the local factory. She wrote more than one report on the subject, and the information still did not end. Grandma, tell me something more about our plant, she often asked her. What to tell? I have already told you everything. The woman did not understand. Well, I don't even know. Julia herself did not understand why she had developed such an interest in this institution. The girl had been collecting materials, sitting in the plant's library for a long time. Julia already knew almost by sight all those who in different years led this enterprise. If she had been woken up at night and asked in what year the plant was evacuated and started working, she would have told it with her eyes closed. Couldn't any of our relatives have worked there? She asked her grandmother once. Why such questions? She didn't understand. It's just that so many people work there and no one is our relative, she asked. I don't know. The woman shrugged her shoulders. I see, we will find out further. Julia did not want to give up. In her head has long settled the idea to find at least some of their relatives. It can't be that everyone came from somewhere and there are no relatives. Julia had long watched the program Looking for You. She dreamed that when she grew up, she would write a letter there and look for her grandfather or his children. She even told her grandmother about it, but she just waved her hand. You'll only waste your time, she said then. And what if I find someone? Argued her granddaughter. Let's make a deal. You'll do it after I'm gone. Grandma Olivia asked her. Let's see, the girl thought to herself, that grandma might live for many more years. This was a topic they had brought up and mused about more than once. The girl also learned that during the evacuation of the plant, together with him came several specialists from abroad, and further did not stop coming. It was very interesting, so Julia did not leave this topic. Grandma, why did you give birth to only one daughter? One day her granddaughter asked her. It just so happened she couldn't find anything to answer. Now I would have aunts and uncles, and so no one. Daddy is also at Grandma one was sad girl. Why are you so caught up in these relatives? Olivia did not understand. I don't know, it's a big city, the factory too, during the war, whoever came here, and there are no relatives. She was saddened. Well, no and no, you will get more, pressed her lips grandmother, because now there is nothing to change. That's right, the girl was all grown up. Olivia was glad she'd lived to be at least that age. It's not scary to leave now, she often said. What are you starting again? She and Julia were at the cottage. The girl had just gone on vacation. She had finished 9th grade. I should have taken my father with me. He would have attached the hoses to the pipes. They were supposed to turn on the irrigation today, and everything was broken. So let's ask him in the evening. He will come and do everything, suggested her granddaughter. Okay, agreed with her grandmother. They spent the whole day digging, making, and shaping beds. After that, they planted beets and carrots, as well as onions. After tired, they got ready to go home. They went to the bus stop, got on the bus, drove home. Julia went to her parents to tell her father about the pipes, and Olivia went home. Father, Granny and I need help. The girl came home. Speak up. Barry listened to her. Tonight there will be watering and we have all the hoses broken, complained the daughter. Don't worry, I'll get it done. He got dressed and went to the store to buy clamps and hoses. Everything was purchased and the man went to the garden. The job took only a few minutes. In an hour, Barry was back in town. The hoses were ready. Julia was supposed to be at her grandmother's house by 7 o'clock, and they would go to the garden again. But her girlfriends came for her. Are you coming with us? They were waiting for her answer. That's right, I had completely forgotten. She remembered that she had promised the girls' friends to go for a walk with them today. Come on, Grandma can handle it all by herself, the friends urged. Yes, moreover, my father did everything. She nodded her head that there was nothing complicated there. Well, let's go for a walk, because with these vegetable gardens she forgot all about us, her friends asked her. All right, agreed Julia. She went into the apartment, changed her clothes, and went out to her friends. This evening they had to go to the disco. The girl thought she was letting her grandmother down, but she also wanted to spend time with the girls, so she decided not to think about it. In the evening she still went to the disco, and it was very late when she came home. She opened the door with her keys, entered the apartment. It was silent. She thought her parents were asleep. She tiptoed in, but there was no one in the room. I don't get it. Where's everyone? Julia turned on the light. She went to the other room, but there was no one there either. The girl went out on the balcony. The apartment was on the top floor. Opposite was visible the house of grandmother. In her windows was burning light. What? Did not understand the girl. She knew for sure that the grandmother at this time is always asleep. Julia gathered herself again and went to her grandmother's house. Luckily, she lived only a block away. The girl was shaking and couldn't stop shaking. By the time she got to Olivia's house, her whole body was shaking. She entered the entryway, went up to the floor, opened the doors. Everyone was here. The ambulance, the neighbors, the other grandmother. Mom, what's wrong with Grandma? Julia asked. She's not well, Selena said in a dead voice. And what happened? Granddaughter did not understand. Just a few hours ago, they were digging beds with her, and now she is sick. I don't know, something with her heart, so I called an ambulance. The woman was on the verge of hysterics. Olivia was hospitalized. They took her away in an ambulance. Now the grandmother was in the hospital. Selena and her daughter visited her grandmother every day. They didn't want anything terrible to happen, but they couldn't prevent it. What they feared most of all happened. How could it be? Everyone was crying around the woman's coffin. Barry, what happened? His wife asked him. I arrived that day. I did as I was asked. And then when Olivia arrived, she said there was nothing, he said. How could that have happened? Selena looked at her husband incredulously. I don't know. I didn't believe her. I decided to check it myself. And I went there again to the garden when I was there. I saw that there was really nothing, he said. But you did? The wife clarified. Of course. Why should I deceive? I looked. There was all cut off. It was obvious that the man considers himself guilty of what happened. Calm down, Selena hugged him. There were a lot of people at the funeral, all condoling with the relatives. Selena and Julia were inconsolable. Grandma, cried her granddaughter. She didn't understand how she was going to live without her now. After the funeral, everyone went to the dining room and then home. We have to learn to live without Grandma, Selena said. I understand, the girl nodded. They had to finish 2 more grades of school before they could go anywhere. Now the topic of war was especially relevant. At school, they often asked to write essays on these topics, and always Julia wrote about her grandmother. She raised the topic of the factory, which she had long studied. It turned out that there was still a lot of interesting things. The girl wrote about it, the workers who stood at the origins and other things. Mom, and you have not tried to find your father? Once asked her daughter from Selena. Oh, and why should I? If he for all these years did not want to communicate with me, then I have no reason to look for him, said the one. And I wonder who my grandfather was. This question has long tormented the girl. If you want, you can look for him, said the woman. Okay, Julia collected all the documents of her mother. She knew little about her father. You don't even have to ask about the last name. The mother warned her right away. Then how will I find him? Julia didn't understand. I don't know, her mother shrugged. Well, let's wait a little longer. Maybe he had other children. Maybe they will find us, the girl concluded. The 11th grade was coming to an end. It was necessary to pass final exams and to enter somewhere. Julia was not worried. She chose history because she studied in a humanitarian class. She knew that, even if she didn't learn the ticket, she had a lot of things to say in her head. Are you ready for the exams? Her mom asked her. Yes, of course. Her daughter never let her down. She always studied well. She came to the exams. She got a ticket about the war, specifically about the blockade. It's a very sad topic. While Julia was talking, she saw tears in the eyes of the commission members. Well, Mom greeted her daughter. 5. What else could it be? Smiled in response. Then there was literature, which the girl also passed on excellent, well, and written subjects. Will you come to my graduation? Julia asked her mother. I do not even know if they will let her go from work, the woman said, but she really wanted to get there. And so this solemn day came. Julia, in a beautiful dress, with a hairstyle, went to school with a bouquet of flowers. Selena promised to come later. The girls were all handsome, the guys in strict suits. And where are you going now? They asked each other about enrollment. I'm in the neighboring city in the pedagogical college, Julia said. Clearly, no one else from you and did not expect, laughed girlfriends. I think it is just in my interests, said the girl. When they announced the beginning of the ceremony, Julia saw her mother enter the hall. She walked over to the other parents and sat down on a chair. I congratulate our graduates of today, the headmistress spoke. After her, the teachers came out, and then the parents. Everyone received their diploma and everyone went to their classrooms where the students congratulated their class teachers. And then there was an informal part in the canteen. Parents did their best for the children. They set the tables, even had champagne. After that, pupils and parents went away. According to the custom, yesterday school children went to meet the dawn and the older ones stayed at school. Some went home, but no one was offended. Well, it's time to go to school, Julia's mom said on her day off. Good, That one was ready for it. They got on the bus and drove to the next town. There were no problems with the enrollment. They just had to go to the institute a few times. And then there were exams. Everything went easily. The girl didn't even realize how it went. "Congratulations, you are now applicants," said the woman who announced the results of enrollment. "Now go home," Selena told her daughter. Good, she agreed. Now she had to decide where she would live, in a dormitory or rent an apartment. "Where would you like to live?" her mom asked her. "In an apartment, of course," her daughter told her. "Well, all students live in a dormitory. If you don't live there, you won't feel like a student," Selena said. "Okay, I'll first move into the dorm and then we'll see," agreed the girl. Hearing agreed, the mother realized that the apartment she would not be able to pull, even if her husband adds. All summer, Julia spent at home. She walked with friends, went to discos, had a blast. At the end of August, she went to check into the dormitory. Hi, when she entered the room, there were already 2 girls there. "Hello," they greeted her. "My name is Julia." The girl introduced herself from the doorstep. "I'm Kira and this is Nellie." The girls had already gotten to know each other. "Nice to meet you." She set her bag on the bed. "I wonder who else will visit us." One bed was empty. The girls were sorting out their things. No one had stopped by today. In the evening, they all cooked together in the kitchen and got to know the other tenants. The next day, they went to the institute together. It was interesting and fun. The whole day, they were familiarized with the subjects, with the teachers. And then the real study began. "So how did you like it at the institute?" Julia asked me in the evening. "Nothing so normally," Kira shrugged her shoulders. "Interesting, at least for now," Nellie said. They continued to live, be friends, and study together. Julia could go home every weekend because her town wasn't very far away. But she didn't want to because they also had school on Saturday, and that wasn't very convenient. "You're not going again?" her friends asked. "No, it is better to go for a walk with you," said the girl. "Okay," but there was no time to go for a walk, they told her. The girls spent a lot of time studying. They tried to work for credit in the first 6 months. The first 6 months you work for the credit. The rest of the time the credit works for you, her mother often told her. This meant that you had to do everything first to get good grades and favor with the teachers. And already in the next sessions, the examiners will look in the credit card. They do not want to spoil the good marks and put automatic. But all the same, there was time for walks. They were young, so they had time for a lot of things. The first year was over very quickly. Julia was going home for summer vacation. They said goodbye to the girls. Julia invited them to visit her, but they realized that they would meet in 2 months, so they didn't regret the parting. And really, those couple of months flew by very quickly, and now it's August again, and they're back in their room. Hey, it's like they broke up yesterday. They all met up together. And don't tell me they hugged. Now they already had a cohesive team. They could go out on the first day. "So who had a good summer?" Julia asked. "In my field," said Nellie. "I was herding cows and harvesting hay." "Wow, I've never done that before." Julia was surprised. "I see you're a city girl," said her friend. "And you?" they asked Kira. "And I'm no way, almost all the time sat at home." She did not know what to say. "All is clear with you," waved at her girlfriends. They started to live again like last year. Studying, preparing, socializing, everything was fine. "Listen, let's have a party in the dormitory sometime," Kira suggested. "Why, we can't, we all know each other. Why not celebrate?" agreed girlfriends. Now it remained to choose a holiday, and the day when they would celebrate it. Certainly not New Year's Eve. At that moment, everyone goes home. Nellie began to list. "Let's have a student's day." Julia suggested it. "Indeed, it happens in the middle of the week," the others agreed with her. After that, they gathered people on their floor and told them the idea. No one refused. "That's great." All the students were happy. That was the end of it, and study continued. "What are you going to do after graduation?" One evening, Kira and Julia were talking. "Oh, what questions you have? You still have to finish it," she laughed. "Do you doubt that?" She raised an eyebrow. "No, but it's a long time away," Julia said. "Yeah, look how fast a year and a half has flown by. It'll be the same amount of time, and then it'll be the GCSEs. Kira was sure of it. "I don't know, I'll work. I'll go to school." She didn't doubt it, if nothing changes. "But I don't want to go to school," she said dreamily. "Where to?" Julia wondered. I don't know. I could go to a museum. Kira shrugged her shoulders. I didn't think about it. She stared at one point. And I recently learned that there was such an education they also take, the girl specifically found out. I see. Julia was thinking about something. What are you thinking about? I was wondering about her friend. Yes, about relatives, the girl admitted. And what do you think about them? Kira asked. Nothing. I don't have them, Julia said sadly. What do you mean? I don't understand. And just like that, for a long time I wanted to write to the program where people are looking for people, but I don't know anything. She was almost crying. Why are you so upset? Everything will be fine. Your relatives will be found. Kara tried to calm her down. Okay, I'm sorry, wiped her friend's tears. They hugged each other and sat like that for a long time. It was New Year's Eve and everyone went home. And when they arrived, the students began to prepare for the holiday, which they had agreed to celebrate. Some strange guys are coming today, Nellie said. Well, we'll get acquainted, laughed Julia. I'm afraid there won't be enough for all of them, her friend also laughed. When January 25th came, everything was ready in the dormitory. The girls made sandwiches, the boys bought wine. They all set the table together. The unfamiliar boys really came. He sat down at the table across from Julia. The girl kept her eyes on him. Hi, he got out of the table and walked over to her. Hello, she held out her hand. Let's go talk, he beckoned her over. Okay, she looked at her friend and left the table. They stepped back to the window. Anthony, he introduced himself. Julia, she answered him. Are you a student at this institute? He asked. Yes, in my second year, she nodded. And I'm in my fourth, he smiled. Are you renting an apartment? She guessed, because she had never seen him in a dormitory. Yeah, he nodded. Is it expensive? She wondered. It's fine, I make my own money, the guy shared with the girl. Julia looked at Anthony. She liked this guy. And who are you by nationality? He asked her. Why do you ask that? She was surprised. Well, it's just that you have such a weird eye cut and black hair, he told her. I'm American, she replied. Come on, don't mind me. I was just asking, Anthony smirked. Let's go back to the table, Julia called out to him. They went back to the table, now sitting side by side. Anthony had been joking all evening, she laughed. He was fun to be with. So, how do you like the new guy? Her girlfriend asked her when they came into the room in the evening. Wow, I like him, she admitted to her honestly. So, are you going to be friends? Kira wondered. I don't know. He didn't offer anything. He didn't even set a meeting. They turned off the light in the room. Julia lay on her back and thought about Seriosa. She really liked this guy, but she didn't want to approach him first. The next day when they came to study at the first break, they met him. Hi, and I'm waiting for you here, he said. Hi, she blushed. She was pleased, but at the same time she was shy. Let's go for a walk tonight, he offered her. I don't know, it's cold outside, she told him. And whoever stopped that? Let's go to a cafe, he invited her. Okay, where shall we meet? She heard the bell ring. Why don't I pick you up at the dorm tonight? He told her. I'll be waiting. She looked at him and ran to the auditorium. What did he say to you? Kira whispered to her when class started. He said he'd come by the dorm tonight to pick me up, Julia told her quietly. Well, wow, we had a celebration. Kira laughed so that the teacher paid attention to her. Julia spent the rest of the school day thinking about Anthony. She didn't know what to wear on this date, since it was her first. On the one hand, it was cold outside, and she needed to wear something warm, but on the other hand, if they went to the cafe, she wouldn't freeze. When they got back to the dormitory, she already assumed what she would wear. The girl decided not to show off too much on the first day and put on jeans, a sweater, and a down jacket on top. Anthony picked her up at 7 in the evening, and they actually went to a nearby cafe. I don't know what got me so hooked on you, but I've been thinking about you all night, the guy told her. You have no idea, it was the same with me too, she blushed again. They ordered, nothing fancy, a bag of pistachios and a glass of beer each. So tell me a little about yourself, who you are, where you come from, what you're studying for, and what you think about your future. I'm an ordinary girl. I came from a neighboring town. Since I studied in the humanities class, I decided to enter the pedagogical school. I used to think that I would be a teacher, but recently a friend told me that with this education you can go to the museum, she began to tell me. I'm also an ordinary guy, studying at the 4th year, as you already know, soon to finish. But I do not want to work in the profession. He was extremely honest with her. And why? She was surprised. Why waste 5 years if you don't want to work in this profession? I don't know, I realized too late, but I need to get an education, he told her openly. Everything is clear with you, she laughed. They were still sitting and talking, the young man as yesterday, joked without ceasing. The girl liked it, she laughed. She was easy with this young man. That evening Anthony saw Julia off. They agreed that they would meet tomorrow. The next day was a day off. They didn't have to go to school, so they could walk around all day. So how was your walk? Her friend asked her when she came into the room. Everything is great. We agreed to meet tomorrow, Julia answered. I see you two are getting serious, Kira said. Nellie listened with interest. For some reason, she was not privy to these topics. Julia and Anthony really started to meet. They couldn't live a day without each other. Now often the girl stayed overnight at the young man's house and went to school from him. If this goes on, then you will soon move to him, said her friends. Maybe I will, she laughed. And that would be the end of our friendship. Kira made a sad face. Nothing can end a true friendship, Julia told her. By summer, Anthony and Julia were already living together seriously, and when the vacations came, the girl invited the guy to meet her parents. He immediately agreed, because he had serious plans for the girl. Mom, Dad, meet Anthony. This is Anthony. I told you about him. They went to her house when they arrived. Daughter, you should have at least warned her that you were not coming alone, her mother said reproachfully. I wanted it to be natural, so that no one would be prepared for anything, the girl answered her. They spent a month together in the city where Julia lived, slept in her room, and although her mother was against it, but Selena understood that her daughter had grown up, so she did not forbid her anything. It's your turn to meet my parents, Anthony told her as he left. Come on, 2 weeks before school starts, I will come to you, she told him because she wanted to be with her parents. Okay, I'll be waiting, and so bye. Call me. He kissed her, got on the train, and drove off. Julia returned home. Her mother looked at her adult daughter, realized that soon, most likely, she will get married. So how do you like your future son-in-law? She asked her mother. Even so, her mother tilted her head. He is very good. If you got to know him better, you would understand that, said the daughter. I believe you. The woman agreed with her. Next year, he will finish the 5th year, and then, while he is in the army, I will also finish my education, Julia told her mother. And where are you going to live? She asked her. I think in this city, Julia told her. That's good, her mother said, because her grandmother's apartment is empty, and she wanted you to have it all to yourself. It was the first time the woman had ever spoken of it. That's great news, Julia was pleased. She spent a month at home, and then, as promised, went to Anthony. Hello, she entered his apartment. Siriusha had only her mother. She met her warmly, hugged her, accepted her as her own daughter. Hello, Anthony has told me a lot about you, Natalie told her. I'm glad, she nodded her head. 2 weeks passed very quickly, and she got to know her mother better. The young people told her what their plans were. Anthony, you have chosen a very nice girl, praised his mom. Okay, do not embarrass. He saw how Julia blushes. After these words, the young man and the girl, the day before the start of school, got together and went. She to the dormitory, he to his apartment, which was still ready to rent for a year. Can't we move in together already? He asked her. No, Anthony, let's hold off, all in good time, she told him. Okay, he kissed her and they parted outside the dormitory. After that, every day it was either her at his place or him at hers. They met, went to caves, socialized with friends. Everything was very good. New Year's Eve was celebrated at Julia's parents' house, and Anthony's mother also came there to meet them. It was nice to be in such warm company, Selena said to Natalie. I'm glad our families are united too, the woman said. I'm leaving in May, and when I come back, I want to take your daughter as my wife, Anthony began to say. That's how long it will take, Selena sighed. Nothing, while the service, study, and everything else. The time will pass quickly, said her daughter. She looked at her chosen one, and she felt good that now they were all sitting together and communicating as a family. Yes, I agree that you will have no time to relax, Selena nodded her head. The future in-laws spent 3 whole days together, and when it was time to part ways, neither one wanted to do it. Anthony, I love you, were the 2 young people. And how I love you, he kissed the girl and pressed her to him. Spring passed very quickly. May came, followed by graduation. After that, Anthony received a summons, and now he was going to go to the army. Are we going to do a send-off? Julia asked the boy. He probably shrugged his shoulders. Okay, Julia nodded her head. She thought about where and how it could be organized. Not 2 weeks later, Natalie, with the help of Selena, Julia's mother, was setting the tables. They were expecting guests. Julia, open up. Anthony heard a knock on the door. Now she was welcoming friends of her favorite person. They'd all sat down at the table together, the young guys and gals toasting to a successful service, and also to Julia's waiting for him. I see you off as if not to the army, but to war, the girl told him. Do not worry, my dear. Everything will pass quickly, he promised her. Anthony did not need anyone and nothing today. The most important thing was to be near his beloved, with whom he planned not to see for the next 2 years. In the morning, on the station platform, they hugged each other. I love you, and I will wait for you, she told him. I promise to write, he answered her. The train rumbled by, and the young man jumped on the footboard. He sent air kisses to Julia, to his mother, and to all who were at his send-off. And then the train moved, and he went from her. Only now the girl felt the tears come to her eyes. Cry, don't hold it in, her mother told her. Okay, Julia stepped aside, the tears flowing without ceasing. She realized that she would not see her beloved for a long time. The girl decided to hit the study, not to think about anything. Summer ended quickly. She helped her mother, then came the fall, and this study. She wrote Anthony every day and received letters from him, which were permeated with love. Shall we go for a walk? Kira called her. No, I won't go anywhere. We have a lot of assignments. We still have to write a term paper, the girl said. She didn't want to set herself up and go somewhere. All right, as you like, and we went. Nellie and Kira waved to her and left the room. But Julia wasn't bored. She was reading her lover's letters. She did other things. It was New Year's vacation time. She came home, her parents welcomed her, and Natalie was there again. I couldn't stay at home alone, so I decided to come to you, she said. Yes, of course, Selena had met Natalie. Their families had become so close that now they couldn't even remember the time when they weren't related. What if Anthony comes over and you two aren't together? Her mother told her later. Well, you and Natalie are friends, so why don't you continue to be friends? Although I don't think Anthony and I will break up, Julia was sure. Time flew fast. It was already summer. When the girl came home, she offered her mother to return her grandmother's vegetable garden. What's gotten into you all of a sudden? Selena didn't understand. I do not know. I want something to occupy myself, answered her daughter. The whole family went to the dacha, as they called it. They made beds there, planted everything. Everything was the same as before, with Grandma. I don't believe that so many years have passed, sat down on a log the girl, and closed her eyes with her hands. All people leave this world. Her mother sat down beside her. Anthony will be back soon, her daughter told her. Not soon enough, her mother stroked her head. The last year at the institute was very difficult. It was necessary to start writing a diploma, several term papers, as well as sessions, GOS, and everything else. But Julia got through it all, and when she had her graduation, she stood at graduation and looked only at the front door. She believed he should come today. And when the ceremony was over, she saw him, all handsome in his military uniform. Darling, she ran to him. He pressed her to him, and they stood together for a long time. There was still no one in the hall, so Anthony pulled Julia away from him, slipped his hand into his pocket, took out a small box, got down on one knee, and asked her to marry him. I accept, she clapped her hands. The girl had indeed waited a long time for this. Now the two happy people stopped by Natalie's house, sat at her table, and then drove to the town where Julia lived. Mama, Papa, we have arrived, shouted the girl in the customary manner. Come on in, darlings, went the mother out into the hall. She had been roughly expecting them in these numbers. Look, Julia showed her her ring finger. Jesus, honey, congratulations. Their mother hugged them both. Julia was very happy to have her favorite people by her side, and soon she was going to marry one of them. So, where are you going to live? Her mother asked her. I don't know. If you let us, we'll take the place where grandmother used to live, the daughter said. Of course we will. Grandma left you this apartment. Selena was happy for her children. You know what I want to tell you, parents? You are the best. Julia hugged them. She and Anthony drove to the apartment where her grandmother used to live. I haven't been here since she died, she confessed to the young man. Are you having a hard time? He asked her. A little bit, she admitted honestly. And what are we going to do about it? He asked her. Nothing. We'll change everything here so that nothing reminds me of her. Julia walked around the apartment and touched everything with her hands. Oh, look, and here is this picture, which all my childhood stressed me. She pointed to the picture where Ivan Savage rides on the gray wolf. A very old painting, I see. Anthony touched it with his hands. Yes, let's take it down so that it doesn't remind me of my childhood, the girl asked him. When they took the painting off the wall, they saw a small door behind it, as if it were a safe. What is it? Anthony asked her. I don't know. It's the first time I've seen it, she said. Come on, let's open it. He looked at her. Okay, come on. The girl reached out her hand and opened the door. Inside was something like a photo album. What is it? Anthony asked. Strange, said the girl. I don't see anything strange, her future husband told her. Just all the photos grandmother kept in her bag, and here is a photo album. Some other interesting. She took it out, went and sat on the bed. When Julia opened it, she turned white. After that, she started to reread everything it said. It was a kind of grandmother's diary, and why hadn't she found it before? Shall I leave you? Anthony asked her. Yes, if you don't mind, she asked him. Okay, out of the way, he went outside. Julia sat, looking through, and rereading everything in the scrapbook. Here's her grandmother young. Here she is getting a job at the local factory. This is after high school. Here's a postcard of some kind. That was the first piece of news. What did it all mean? Julia couldn't understand. She flipped through the pages, and the third page was the most interesting. There was a picture of her grandmother standing next to a man of Asian appearance, signed Zhang Feng Wei at the bottom. And underneath the photo was a letter of confession. Darling, I can't stay here all the time. I'm expected back home, so I have to leave you behind. Always your Vi. Julia sat there, looking at it all and crying. So that's where it came from, she realized. The beginning detailed how two Koreans had come to town, how everyone laughed at their names, and afterward, one was spelled Victor and the other Frederick. Julia couldn't believe that this was really the whole story about her grandmother. She had always been the perfect person for her, and now such a thing was being revealed. My beloved Victor, I've missed you so much. I decided to write, though I don't know whether this letter will reach you or we will never see or hear from each other, wrote her grandmother, and it was pasted under the photo of the two of them. There was also an envelope on which it was written in red letters, "Return to sender." Tears came to the girl's eyes. She realized that her grandmother had loved and waited for the same man all her life. So that's why I have such a cut eye. She touched her slightly swollen eyelids. Julia sat back and looked through the album further. The further she flipped through, the more and more she realized. Didn't Mom know about this? She asked herself. But Julia wasn't in a hurry to show it to anyone. She wanted to figure it out for herself first. She turned page after page and learned more and more about her beloved grandmother. Hi, my love. I thought I'd write to you. I'm doing well. I don't know how you are. You probably blame me for everything, and I deserve it. But I can't do anything else. I have a family, a house, children, and I can't come back to you. Victor wrote to her. Each letter was accompanied by a postcard or a photo. How much I love you, and I do not hold a grudge against you. I know that it is difficult for you, but you hold on. I love you, Grandma answered him. And since the letter was here, she was just answering, but she didn't send anything. Beloved, look at the views from our window. He sent another picture, and everything was really beautiful there. And then she would reply to him, describing how she felt. While Julia was reading this picture book, she cried more than once. Finally, she got to the last page. and there was a picture of her mother, just as she had suspected. Anthony, she looked outside from the window. Yes, are you finished? He was sitting on the bench. Come in, please, Julia asked him. The young man quickly went up to the floor. And what did you find out there? He wondered. Look, she showed him the last photo, which was also accompanied by a caption. And what is this? He did not understand. This is my grandmother, and in her arms is my mother. Julia looked at the young man. I see, and so, he pointed at the man, it's her father. It turns out so, the girl was still in shock. Wow, so that's how you got those eyes, he reminded her. He had asked her that the first time they met. Only I don't understand why Grandma was hiding all this. Julia didn't know what to do now, whether her mother knew about it or not. Well, what to guess now? You should go and ask her directly, he advised his future wife. I'll do so. You can work here alone, and I'll go to my mother, she asked him. Okay, he agreed. Julia took the album, put it in a bag, and went to her parents. She had a lot of things to think about while she was walking. What, where, and how. Why are you here? Selena was surprised when she saw her daughter coming home. I need to talk to you. She looked intently at her mother. Talk. I'm listening to you. Her mother was worried. She couldn't understand what was going on with her daughter. Did they have a fight with Anthony? After all, she came alone. Let's go to the kitchen, was puzzled daughter. They went into the kitchen, sat down at the table. Do you know who your father is? The first thing the girl asked. You know I don't. It seems to me that you and I had already talked about it, her mother told her. Yeah, and today we went to Grandma's house. I decided to change everything there. And the first thing I did was take down this old painting right here. She pulled it out first. Yeah, I remember it. It was hanging in the little room, Selena confirmed. So, and behind it was something like a safe. Behind the painting, the girl pulled out an album. What is it? Selena didn't understand. An album where grandmother kept her most precious memories, Julia said. I don't understand. Selena looked up at her daughter. Look at it, Julia advised her. The woman opened the cover and immediately saw a Korean man in the photo and read all the captions below the photo. And most importantly, you'll still have time to read it all. Julia opened to the penultimate page. There Olivia stood with a little girl in her arms, in whom the woman recognized herself. And at the bottom was an inscription that she would never forget the one who had given her the most precious gift of her life. What, you mean this man, my father? Tears spurted from Selena's eyes. She wouldn't lie, especially since they never saw each other again. He sent her postcards and hers never reached him. She showed the inscriptions. Julia, I don't believe my mother could be like this, the woman said through tears. But this album says otherwise. She showed her all the new letters and photos. Yes, I see it all. Selena turned to the window and stared at one point. And what are we going to do? The daughter asked, and looked at her mother. I don't know, she answered honestly. Listen, do you want to know the relatives or the man himself, if he is still alive? Julia was very interested in all this. I want to, but I'm afraid, Selena admitted honestly. Well, let me do it myself, her daughter asked. To be honest, you really shocked me today, Selena said. You can't imagine how shocked I was when I saw all this. Julia remembered the emotions she felt when she first saw it all. I imagine Selena heard the front door slam. It was Barry coming home. He made his way into the kitchen. The women had told him everything. He just didn't say anything, sat down on a chair, took a long look, and didn't say anything. And I wondered who our Russian girl had those eyes in. He looked at Julia. And Anthony asked me about it too, the girl confessed. What are you going to do? He looked at the women. I want to apply for Wait For Me. The girl did not want to hide anything from her parents. This is good, but imagine that the relatives on the other side will be against it, will not offend you. Immediately warned her father. No, she was sure of it. Good, then go ahead. Barry wished her good luck. While they were talking, Selena sat like that, staring at one point. Julia packed up all her things and headed back home. She didn't know that Anthony had peeled off almost all the wallpaper, and it wouldn't be comfortable for them to sleep there. Oh, it's so dusty. The girl entered the apartment. Yeah, I don't think we should stay here. He came over and hugged her. Then let's go back to her parents, Julia laughed. It was funny for her to go back and forth today. Okay, we'll do it there, they agreed. When the young people entered Barry and Selena's apartment, They were surprised that they were going from one apartment to another. But when they explained that their apartment was being renovated, they were understood and were not kicked out. Selena didn't want to talk to anyone today. She went to her room and spent the rest of the evening there. During this time, Julia went to the show's website. She entered all the information to apply. When the form opened up to her, she began to type in the first name, last name, middle name, who she was looking for. The girl filled out the application on her mother's behalf. When it was finished, she hit the submit button. That's it. Now all that's left to do is wait. She turned to Anthony. Yes, and I hope it will happen very quickly, he was sure. Good if it does, she smiled with just her lips. After that, the young people went to bed. The girl thought that tomorrow she would already have some kind of answer. Even if it was negative, it was also a result. She pressed herself against Anthony. Only one day had passed, but today so many events had happened that it seemed to Julie that a whole week had passed. The morning is wiser. Anthony kissed her and they turned off the light. Julia couldn't sleep for a long time. She kept thinking about her grandmother, how she could keep this secret for so many years. And with these thoughts, she fell asleep. In her dream, she dreamt of the same Chang Feng. He was reaching out to her, asking for something. Julia woke up in tears. First thing in the morning, she went to the computer to see what was wrong with her application. Anthony, she screamed in a voice that didn't sound right. Why are you yelling? He jumped up from the bed. I got an answer. She stared at the monitor, unable to believe this was really happening. What did they say? He walked over to the monitor. The screen said they needed to contact the program editors. Julia didn't think long. She picked up her phone and dialed the number that was listed in the reply message. Hello, shouted the girl as soon as there was an answer on the other end. Did you apply? Began to speak in a monotone voice. Julia even thought it was a recording. Yes, I found an old photo album at my grandmother's house, and there are pictures of her and my mom, as well as her father, who no one knew about until yesterday. The girl spoke quickly. So, is everything on the application form correct? Asked her on the other end. Yes, she nodded her head, though it was unnecessary. We will check everything and get back to you, said goodbye to Julia, and she hung up. I don't believe it can all come out so quickly. She looked at her husband-to-be. Why not? He didn't understand. I don't know. The girl was worried. After that, they went to the kitchen to have breakfast. There, Selena started asking for details. If Julia couldn't sleep at night, and then she dreamed various things, Selena couldn't sleep at all that night. She kept wondering how her mother could do such a thing. Now they will figure it out, and then it will be clear what to do next, the daughter said. The apartment needed to be renovated. The wedding was scheduled for the end of summer. By this time, I wanted to finish everything. But the young people, or rather, Julia, did not have a thought about repairs. All she could think about now was her mother and her father. Well, are you not going there again today? Anthony asked her. I will. There was nothing left for the girl to do. Then let's go. He was waiting for her. In her grandmother's apartment, the wallpaper had already been torn off. Now they had to prime the walls, and they could glue new ones. To the store, Anthony asked after the priming was finished. Isn't that enough for today? Julia asked. If you don't want to glue, then at least help you choose what to buy. He knew he couldn't handle it himself. Okay, let's go, she agreed. In the store, they spent a good 3 hours. All could not decide on the type of wallpaper. Finally, they chose one that was sufficient in the warehouse and they both liked it. So they went home. Where have you been so long? Selena met them. First in the apartment and then in the store, Julia told her. Had you at least eaten? Her mother was worried. No, but believe me, it wasn't about that. Julia hugged the woman. It's okay. I don't think I'm as worried as you are, she told her daughter. It's okay. They walked to the kitchen, had something to eat, and then went to their room. What's up? Anthony looked at Julia. Nothing. She looked at the monitor. That's okay. He was undressing for bed. Yeah, I think so too, she admitted to him. So 2 weeks passed. During this time, young people, not without the help of parents, made repairs in one room. Of course, it was cosmetic, but it was enough. After a while, Julia got a phone call. Hello, she picked up the phone. Hello, have you contacted the program? They asked her. Yes, I'm looking for my grandfather and my mother for my father, she said. Okay, everything that was asked on your parameters, we checked. Now you need to take a DNA test. And only then we will invite you to the program, frustrated her editor. Great, when and where to come? Julia wondered. When everything was explained to her, she told her mother her presence was not necessary, but she still wanted to go. Mom, we need to buy tickets. They came home. It's mandatory, Selena. As much as she wanted to know the truth, she dreaded it. Please, so much work has already been done. Let's not back down, her daughter begged her. Okay, you're taken, agreed the mother. 2 days later, they were already sitting at the airport, waiting for their flight. Are you nervous? Julia asked her mother. I won't say yes, but I can't say definite no. I can't say, the woman said, and didn't look at her daughter. They flew in by invitation, went into the lab, took all the necessary tests. If it turns out to be your father, well, he's still alive. So if you thought you were an orphan, you can forget about it, the lab technician told her. What are you talking about? How old is he now? Celine looked at him with big eyes. Asians are long-lived, he smiled. Selena and Julia went outside. They breathed in the fresh air. They had to fly home again. So what do you think? The mother asked her daughter. Let's not think anything. Just wait for the results. She didn't want to be nervous for a while. Okay, she agreed with her. They flew home quietly. Anthony and Julia went about the renovation of the apartment, and Barry and Selena went on with their normal lives. Time dragged by very slowly. For a period of time, Selena and her daughter even seemed to forget that they had an important case going on somewhere. They were distracted by renovations and wedding preparations. Do you think we'll pick out a dress here? The daughter said to her mom. I don't know, but can we at least look? Selena asked. Okay, they went to another store. But Julia didn't believe, not at all, that they would be able to find anything. They were measuring one wedding dress after another when the girl's phone rang. Hello. She put her finger to her lips, showing her mother to be quiet. Hello. Did you apply to find a relative and take a DNA test? A male voice spoke up. Yes, you're right, glanced Julia at her mother. We invite you to the TV program that will be held in 2 weeks, said the same voice in the receiver. Thank you, we will definitely be there, disconnected Julia. And what? Waited the mother for her verdict. They're inviting us, Julia smiled. They need a show. We are test subjects, said the woman. Why the negativity? The girl didn't understand. Well, why? Now on our television only, so was sure Selena. Okay, let it be so, but we'll still go, was sure Julia. Well, you started it. You decide whether we go or not, Selena said as if she didn't want to. That's great. The girl was happy. They got everything ready for the wedding. They bought tickets to Washington, and now they just have to wait for the date they need to leave. If it turns out that he is your father and my grandfather, he will even make it to our wedding in time, Julia said. Yes, the woman agreed with her. And that day came. They arrived at the studio, now sat, and waited for their exit to be announced. The supposed relatives did not see each other. They were in different rooms. Julia was the first to be called into the studio and was asked what and how she had learned. She began her story with the fact that she was brought up with her grandmother, loved her more than anyone else on Selene. Then how she was passing away, well, and at the very end, how they came to the apartment and found the album. And you think your mother is the daughter of J.N.G. Feng Wei? They asked her a question. Here, she handed them the album that belonged to her grandmother. You can see for yourself. Yes, indeed, it seems to be true. The host flipped through the pages. So it is true, Julia almost cried. Well, at the end of the program, it will be clear. It was obvious that the presenter was making a show out of it. Now Julia believed that there was no victor, that now their story would be told, and then they would say that they took a test, but it was negative. The girl sat on the couch, looked at the presenter, and waited to see what would happen next. Well, let's see a fragment from the life of our heroes, said the young man who hosted the show. On the screen, the footage flashed, which was clearly not the U.S. Selena saw it too from the room where she was sitting. Tears came to Julia's eyes. Had they really found the person who was in the pictures of her grandmother's album? Well, you'll recognize someone in these shots. The presenter looked at the picture and then shifted his gaze to Julia. She was silent because no one had been shown yet. She looked with all her eyes, but she didn't see anyone. Why don't you say anything? The man who was in charge looked at her. I don't know what to say, she said honestly. Well, say something. Do you even believe that we found someone? He asked as if he was mocking her. Are you kidding me? She was ready to fall to the ground in shame. Why did she believe these people? They just wanted to make a show and they did. Why, no one is mocking, shrugged the presenter. He was looking at the screen as well as Julia. And at the same moment, an old man appeared on the screen. He was sitting on a bench near the house. And yes, he remotely resembled the one Julia had seen in the picture. The girl's heart beat faster, her hands shook. Did you recognize him? The host saw her excitement. I don't know, she was fiddling with her handkerchief. I think you recognize someone. The host sat down next to her. Is he here? The girl looked at him. Yes, he nodded and smiled, but we'll call your mother here first. The music started playing and Selena walked into the studio. Hello, the host said hello to her. Good evening, she sat down next to her daughter. Well, how do you feel? Did we find your father? Looked at her, who led the program. I don't know if Selena was ready to burst into tears, but I do know, Jang Feng Wei, come here to the studio, he called out. No way, Julia clutched her face. We can do anything. Miracles happen. Everyone in the studio applauded. An elderly man came out here. He stood in front of Selena and Julia. He was crying. Daughter, forgive me, he said in broken Russian. Hello. Naturally, Selena did not perceive him in any way. So you want to know if this is your father or not? Asked the host. Of course, everyone was in suspense. Then I invite an expert here in the studio. He put out his hand. A woman came out who was holding an envelope in her hands. She stood in the middle of the room and looked around. After that, she took out the results from the envelope. So the alleged father, Jang Feng Wei, and the alleged daughter, Celine. The possibility of parentage is, she stopped talking and looked at the people present. Come on, Julia stepped forward. 99.9%. Applause erupted in the hall. Daughter, a man jumped up from his seat. I can't call you daddy. She stood up and walked over to him. They approached each other and embraced. The audience did not stop applauding. Julia sat looking at her mother and cried. So, what are you going to say now? The host came up to them. I can't tell you anything now. It was obvious that Selena was at a loss. Why did you find your father? The presenter asked her. I knew all my life that I didn't have one, and now I have one, and I'm just shocked. Selena looked at the man. He was holding her hand. Well, what do you think? He turned to Victor, as he was known here. I wasn't expecting it. He said, I was coming here for an internship and I met Olivia. We were only with her for a few months and then I moved back. I wrote to her, but she didn't answer me. All of this was told by a man with a heavy accent. So how come she didn't reply? Julia put in a word. Here, look at this. Chang Feng picked up the album and started flipping through it, tears flowing from his eyes. She must have misread my handwriting, so she misspelled the address, he said regretfully. That's it. Now you know you have a daughter, and you know you have a father. How do you feel about it? The presenter continued his show. Incomprehensibly, Selena looked at him. She wanted to leave the studio sooner. Outside in the car, her husband was waiting for her along with Anthony. They said goodbye to everyone, got up, and walked out of the studio. When they were outside, Selena called her father into the car. I didn't come alone, he said. Who did you come with? Julia became agitated. My children and grandchildren are with me, just like you. We all came together, he said. And where are you staying? Selena asked. In a hotel, he answered. So let's go there quickly. The women couldn't wait to see their relatives. Together they drove to the hotel, and when they entered the room, their eyes became a little bigger than they were. It turned out that Selena's father had 6 children of his own, and they had several grown children of their own. Wow, that's a lot of family, Julia said. That's not all. There are still relatives back home. Chan Feng's children and grandchildren did not speak Russian, so they had to communicate through their grandfather. But even so, the relatives understood each other. I insist that you come to us, said Selena. She had lived with her mother, her husband, her daughter, and her mother-in-law, and no other relatives. And here, it turns out, she has a very large extended family. Children, do you mind? Grandpa turned to his family. Of course not, answered the oldest son. who could speak a little Russian. Together they booked tickets and drove to the town where Selena, Barry, and Julia lived. Natalie was invited to visit, as well as Selena's mother-in-law. All the extended family couldn't even fit in one apartment. "And I want to tell you that you are just in time for our wedding," Julia told them. In a week's time, there was going to be a celebration, and everyone who was here was invited. The week passed very quickly, and now Anthony and Julia stood before the registrar, and she asked them if they agreed to become husband and wife to each other. The young ones said yes, and then they exchanged rings. Next, everyone got into their cars and the fun began. First, they went to take pictures, then they went to the restaurant. Not a single person left the wedding. Everyone congratulated the newlyweds. Julia looked at all the relatives and could not believe that now she has so many relatives. "How are you feeling?" The newlyweds came home. "Very well," she told her husband. They had arrived home, and now they wanted to discuss how everything had gone. The relatives were housed partly at Selena's, partly at the hotel. "You know, Anthony, I am the happiest woman on Selene," she looked at her husband. "And I'm happy because you're happy," he hugged her. "You can imagine I lived for 20 years without one relative. I had a mom, dad, grandmother, and even then one died. And now, look how many relatives I have. But they are not to embrace," rejoiced Julia. The newlyweds talked a little more and went to bed. Tomorrow, they began a real adult life. In the morning, they went to their mother's house, and other relatives came up there too. They sat at the table for a while and then went to see the relatives off. At the airport, they all agreed that they would meet exactly 1 year later. But during that year, they would return phone calls and emails. "I'm so happy to have you," Julia hugged everyone. "And we're so glad, granddaughter," said her grandfather. When the plane left, everyone got in the car and drove home. "I still can't believe that I have a father and so many brothers, nephews and grandnephews," Selena said. "What can you do? You have to believe," her daughter hugged her. "And it's all thanks to you, my sweetheart," her mom hugged her. Imagine how it happens in life. You have no one, and then one day in a whole family. Julia herself has not yet in her head that all these relatives appeared to her. "Why did you take that picture?" Mom was complaining about her daughter changing her grandmother's apartment. "You know how much I loved her. I just wanted to change everything so it would be different," she told her. "Yeah, if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't have found anyone." Selena shook her head. After that, everyone went home. Julia had to get a job. Anthony had already found a place too. They were all happy. Not 6 months later, Julia fell sick. "You're pregnant?" Her husband immediately looked at her. "Why did you immediately think I was pregnant?" "It was just dizziness." She was a little scared. "I really want you to be pregnant." Her husband looked at her. The next day, Julia went to the doctor. At first, she wanted to buy a test, but then she decided that the doctor would have a 100% result. "Who's last in line to get pregnant?" she asked in the hallway. One of the women answered her. She took the line, sat, and wondered how she would get into the office. And when she entered and sat down in front of the doctor, he looked at her through his glasses and asked her what she was complaining about. "I'm pregnant," she told him. "The delay at the test, how did you know that?" he asked her. "I just know, that's all." Julia felt like an idiot now. "Okay, come to the chair and let's see," said the gynecologist. The girl undressed, climbed on the chair. The doctor began the examination, while he frowned his eyebrows, moved his lips. And when all finished, he went to the table and began to write. "Doctor, what is it?" she asked him. "I'm afraid to be wrong, but I think you have a uterine myoma." He looked at her over his glasses. "I don't understand." The patient looked at him. "And what is not clear? I write you a referral to ultrasound. Only there you can determine whether your diagnosis is confirmed or not." He handed her a paper. "How likely are you to be right?" She was wondering. "I can't answer your question." He was taking notes. "Okay, thank you." The girl wanted to cry. She took the referral, went home. "What's wrong with you?" She went to her mother. "Look," she handed her a paper. "What's this?" Mom started reading it. "Here, I thought I was pregnant," Julia said. "What do you think?" She waited for her mom to tell her. "We have to go for an ultrasound," she told her. No, Julia didn't want to know there was something wrong. "Well, your problems, think." But sooner or later you'll have to go. Selena was sure of it. Oh, I don't want to talk about it anymore. Julia didn't want to bring it up. Why did you come to me then? Selena didn't understand. Just show. The daughter got up from the table and headed for the exit. Think, it's your life and your health, her mother said in her back. Good, she didn't even turn around. The girl walked home. She didn't look around, only at her feet. When she got home, she was greeted by Anthony. Well, what did the doctor tell you? He asked her. Nothing, not pregnant. She wouldn't tell him anything. Okay, why are you so crazy? He followed her. Don't go, please, she asked him. Okay, but can you tell me why you're so upset? He was interrogating her. Look in your purse, she told him. Now Anthony returned to the hallway. He took the report out of her purse, read it, went to the bedroom where Julia was. What do you think? She looked up at him. If you don't want to be examined, don't go. Anthony put his arm around his wife. Okay, she lay face down on the pillow and cried. What if it's true? He hugged her. And if it wasn't, she was impenetrable. I think we should go for an ultrasound and then suffer. Anthony told her he didn't want to hurt his wife. He even felt sorry for her, but walking around in ignorance wasn't good either. Anthony understand. I will not go to the operation, she told him. Who said anything about surgery? He didn't understand. You understand, if the ultrasound diagnosed that I have a myoma, then it will be necessary to go to surgery. She was sure of it. Well, let's wait a little, he agreed with her. And let's go to Korea, to my grandfather, she told him. Are you sure about that? He was just shocked at what she was suggesting. Of course I'm sure, she looked at him. Not 2 weeks later, Anthony and Julia were sitting in the airport, waiting to board their flight. Did you at least give them a heads up? Anthony asked her. Of course, we wouldn't have gone without it. I even called my mom with me, but she didn't agree. Julia told him she was very sad. Well, promise me when we get there, you'll go to the ultrasound. It was very important to him. Okay, I will definitely go to the ultrasound, but only when I decide and tune in, she told him and kissed him on the cheek. They flew to the relatives. They were met. Everything was as good as it could be. Grandpa, who had recently found a granddaughter, a daughter, a son-in-law, and all the other relatives, was very happy about it. Naturally, no one told him about his granddaughter's illness, but he didn't need to know. Anthony and Julia stayed there for exactly a week, then they came back. He went straight to work, and she was hesitant and couldn't get in the mood to go for an ultrasound. It had been almost 3 months since that appointment when she got the referral, and Julia was in the mood. She made an appointment for an ultrasound. She arrived, got in line. Who's last in line? She asked. What are you in for? She was asked by visitors who were already here. On pregnancy, she said, and let that she lied, but so that no one knew and did not pity her. Then you'll follow me, said one of the women. It turned out that that woman was second in line, and when she passed, Julia let 2 people go ahead of her. She was afraid to hear the diagnosis, but when there was no one left in the hallway and the girl lab technician came out and invited her into the office, there was nothing left to do but go in. Julia lay down on the couch. The doctor took her referral. She read it, curled her lips, and began to look. The woman who was doing the ultrasound, her name was Leslie. After a moment, she smiled and said, Girl, I congratulate you. You are pregnant. You are 18 weeks. After that, she smiled for a long time. Julia cried. Why are you crying? The woman who did the ultrasound asked her. Did you see what my diagnosis was? She told her about the referral. How can a doctor make a diagnosis without an ultrasound? Leslie didn't understand. That diagnosis was in doubt, and I'm telling you, you're pregnant. She looked at her and smiled. Julia's mood immediately lifted. What am I supposed to do now? She was being silly. Go and get registered, Leslie told her. Okay, I hear you. Julia got up off the couch. I wish you happiness. The doctor looked at her. Thank you. The girl was grateful to her. She drove home, and inside everything was blooming and smelling. Julia couldn't wait to tell her husband and mom that they would soon become a grandmother and father. Hello, my love. She entered the apartment. Honey? He looked at her questioningly. Yes, she nodded her head. Yes, what? Anthony didn't understand. You're going to be a daddy soon. She walked up to him and kissed him. Love, I'm happy. He jumped up, hugged her, and kissed her. "We have to tell Mom," she was crying. "Why are you crying?" He didn't understand. "I'm happy," she told her husband. "And I'm happy," he spun her around. They packed up and drove first to Julia's parents' house. "Mommy, I'm pregnant. You're going to be a grandmother soon," she told her. "My darling, I'm so happy for you." She hugged her son-in-law and daughter. "And I am so happy that this myoma has turned into a child," the girl rejoiced. "We need to tell the grandparents," although this word was unfamiliar to them, but they were saying it now. Julia started calling her second grandmother first, the one who cried as soon as she heard the news. And then the call was to her grandfather, who first laughed and then cried. "I will definitely come to the birth," he promised, listening. "But what if we have a Korean baby?" Anthony suddenly realized. "So what?" She looked at him. "No, nothing now," he winked at her. "What do you mean?" She didn't understand his answer. They drove home, hailed a cab, got in it, held hands. "What did you mean?" She hinted at what he'd said about the Korean kid. "No. Imagine what would have happened if we hadn't found out your grandfather was Korean," he laughed. What would have happened? She didn't know what he meant. "Imagine I come to the hospital and 2 Russian people have a baby born narrow-eyed and black-haired," he said. "Yes, so what? You wouldn't believe me," she wondered. "Anything is possible," they talked. "It turns out you don't believe me." She removed her hand from his arm. "You misunderstand me." He wanted to take it back. "No." Julia got out of the car. "Darling, wait. Think about it." It's true, he was catching up with her. "I don't know." She went into the driveway. The next day, Julia went to the gynecology clinic, got registered. Now she started her follow-up. About the conversation with her husband, she did not forget. The girl began to read literature. It turned out that her husband was right. National peculiarities are always manifested only after a generation. Now she understood what Anthony meant. "I'm sorry, she was already 7 months pregnant." "For what?" He didn't remember anything. "I realize now that you were right then," she hugged him. "I love you," he kissed her. "And I love you." She couldn't believe things could be so good. When Julia was 7 months pregnant, she was admitted to the hospital. She didn't refuse because she wanted her baby to be born healthy. An IV, a nurse came into the room. "Good," Julia smiled towards her. "Oh, what an unusual appearance you have." The girl looked at her. "Yes, my grandfather is Korean." Julia said it as if she was proud of it. "That's exotic," the girl told her. "That's proud. He worked in our town in a factory as a chief engineer," she bragged. "You're a smart girl for having such an opinion about your grandfather." Now the girl was already proud of her patient. For 2 whole months, Julia was lying in labor, but she did not regret it, as long as all was well with the child. When it all started, she was taken to the prenatal ward. "The fetus is large," the head nurse warned her. "And what to do?" The girl wrinkled her nose in pain. "Now the doctor will come and tell you everything," she said. For now, they only supported the flow of labor. "Breathe, breathe," the doctor shouted at her. "I can't," she cried. "It hurts." "Everything will be fine." He tried, but nothing worked. To be on the safe side, the gynecologist told Julia to go to surgery. There she was given anesthesia and the surgery began. "I don't feel well," she screamed. "Be patient, sister," the surgeon and the gynecologist appealed to her. When the baby was taken out of the mother's body, the doctor looked at it for a long time. He saw her husband come to her. He was definitely not a Kazakh, not a gypsy or anything else. He was definitely Russian. "Julia, are you sure you won't have any problems with your husband?" He showed her the child. "My favorite, Maximka," she said, and turned her head to the right. "So you didn't answer my question." He waited. "What could be the problem?" She didn't understand. "Your child clearly doesn't look Russian," he said bluntly. "Because my grandfather is Korean," she smiled, though she felt bad. Now everything is clear. He handed the child to the pediatrician. After that, she was moved to a room, and then the baby was moved there. A couple hours later, Anthony came in. "Where's my son?" He was standing under the window. Now Julia got up. "And my grandson?" The girl heard him. Wait, she was in pain, but she was ready to show this child to everyone. "Grandpa said he would come when you were released from the hospital," said a happy Selena. "I love you all." She put her hand to the window. 3 days later, Julia and the baby were discharged. When they left the hospital, they were greeted by Grandpa Victor with flowers.
Olivia was beginning to lose patience. She'd been preparing for this evening since yesterday, shopping, cleaning the apartment, preparing all sorts of appetizers and entrees for the family and friends. And now she was sitting there listening to her husband mock her. Adrian has an amazing ability to find a flaw in everything. Moreover, this gift is revealed in the presence of strangers, and when she and her husband are alone, more sensitive, loving and affectionate husband cannot find. But when the third, fourth, 10th person showed up, he was a fountain of sarcastic remarks about Olivia. This time she was the protagonist of the bad joke. "I passed by a hairdresser's yesterday," Adrian said. "Looking out the window, my wife was sitting in a chair, and the master was working on her. I think I'll wait. She comes out, and what do you think?" A bald haircut. His sister Emma chuckled, running her spoon into the salad bowl to make herself a Caesar dressing. "I wish they'd shaved her bald," Adrian laughed, and that laugh was like a sharp arrow through Olivia's body, electrocuting her brain and making her tense. She'd been dyed red. You wouldn't believe it, her hair was the color of copper wire. "What about you?" my mother-in-law asked, snacking on a ham and cheese roll. I'm sure I kicked her back to the hairdresser's to change her hair color. "Yeah, now. So she can pay those barbers and hairdressers again? I made her dye her hair at home. If you look closely, you can even see that not all of her hair is dyed. There's copper coming through, look closely." The guests laughed, eyeing Olivia's hair, and she sat there red with embarrassment. Every time Adrian mocked her, she wanted to get up and leave. One time she had done just that, but then there had been such an enormous scandal. "You have no respect for my family," Adrian yelled. "They don't come to visit us often enough to be disrespected like this. How could you do this to them?" Olivia stood there like a delinquent child with her head down, unable to say anything to her husband. She regretted leaving the table 100 times over. She should have been patient. But this time the cup of patience was overflowing. No, she would not repeat the last attempt and leave the living room with the table she herself had lavishly set and her husband's relatives feasting. But she had to stop this bacchanalia, or it would never end. When the guests were a little tired of laughing at the color of Olivia's hair, poured the liquor into shot glasses and started snacking again, she said, "The other day I went to the orphanage where your children live. I looked at them, brought gifts and sweets. You know, they're so cute. Why don't we take them for the weekend?" The principal said it's possible. The room fell silent. The room fell silent as they heard Olivia's words. She raised her glass of wine as if nothing had happened. "Adrian, let's drink to the children you abandoned. I wish them to find decent parents, more worthy than you." A second later, her husband's heavy hand came down on her cheek. Her face flamed, burning as if it had been scorched by 100 tongues of flame. Adrian reached up, grabbed her hair roughly, and pulled her away from the table. During her happy student years, Olivia fell in love. Kieran was 2 years older than her and had already graduated from the military academy. He was as handsome as God, and when Olivia saw him in his uniform for the first time, the ground swam under her feet. He was tall, slender, with radiant brown eyes that looked like velvet, and he seemed to her like a man of unearthly beauty. They met on May Day in the city park. Olivia and her friend Mel were walking along an alley. The weather lavished the small riverside town with sunshine and warmth. A light breeze fluttered the white silk scarf around Olivia's neck. Suddenly it flew off her shoulders, carried by the wind, and flew away. Oops, the girl caught herself and rushed after him. She ran, and the handkerchief fluttered and fluttered in the wind. As soon as the airflow subsided a little, it dropped to the pavement next to the strange guy. He picked up the silk scarf and held it out to Olivia. "Is it yours?" the boy asked, not even thinking to address the strange girl as you. "Yes, thank you," she replied, and reached out to take the handkerchief, but he suddenly hid it behind his back. "Favorite thing?" the guy asked, smiling an open, slightly joking smile. "Grandma's present ... Can I have it?" "Of course you can," he answered. "Only in exchange for your name." My name's Olivia. Give me the handkerchief. That's a beautiful name. Why are you so scared? I won't eat your grandmother's gift after all. The stranger smiled, and Olivia felt so awkward that she was ready to turn around and leave the handkerchief and run out of the park. Seeing her confusion and embarrassment, the guy decided not to torture the girl any longer, spread the silk and gently lowered the handkerchief on Olivia's shoulders. I'm sorry if I scared you or hurt you. I didn't mean to, he admitted. I was just walking alone in the park. It's a holiday, springtime, everyone's happy, having fun, going on rides. I'm Kieran. The guy held out his hand to her, and Olivia instinctively offered hers. His palm was warm. Can I keep you company, or can you keep me company? I see you're out alone, too, Kieran said. No, I'm with a friend, Olivia said, pointing toward Mel, who was standing nearby. She saw Olivia waving her hand and walked over to her friend and the strange guy. Girls, let's have some ice cream. Kieran suggested it. My treat. The company headed towards the summer cafe. Kieran turned out to be very sociable, cheerful, and confident. After ordering ice cream for himself and the girls, he asked, Are you students? Yes, we study at the Teacher Training Institute, Mel answered, flipping her leg over her foot so that her already short skirt almost completely exposed her thigh. Kieran's gaze caught the lacy elastic of the stocking, and Olivia noticed it. Mel's doing her thing. She's going to start seducing Kieran, she thought. Olivia and Mel had been friends since freshman year. They were always together. Everyone around them wondered what could bind these two very different girls so tightly together. Mel was bright, even a little flashy. Long black hair flowing down her back almost to her waist. Fashionable clothes, chiseled figure with a narrow waist and lush breasts attracted the eyes of guys. And the girl knew her strengths and never missed a moment to use her feminine charms. Olivia was the opposite of her. She dressed modestly but tastefully. Her straw-colored hair was always braided or arranged in a bun at the back of her head. Her face was almost completely devoid of makeup, and her unremarkable, ordinary figure. Nothing made her stand out from the other students at the Pedagogical Institute. Mel was just suffocating, dying from the lack of male attention. I should have gone to law school, she complained. There are plenty of guys there, but in our group there are 2 nerds with glasses, and the rest are all girls. Did you see the competition for law school? Olivia asked her. 38 people per seat. You're retaking your history of literature exam for the 3rd time, and you're still talking about law school. No, Mel, you would definitely fail the entrance exams for lawyers. Her friend understood this, and only sighed, listening to the lectures without much interest. But she found a way to stay visible. At lunchtime, Mel went to the cafeteria of the neighboring building, where mostly boys studied. This way, she often managed to make new acquaintances and even short-term, non-committal romances. When Kieran told a little about himself and the girls learned that he was graduating from the military academy, Mel's interest in the guy grew exponentially. What do the officers do for fun? She asked Kieran. Just like everyone else, the boy answered. They go to the movies, meet and date girls, go for walks. I like to go to the skating rink in winter and sometimes play hockey with the guys. For me, sports are a punishment, Mel said, her red lipstick on her chubby lips. And movies are boring. What do you do for fun? Kieran asked. His question was directed at both girls, but he was looking at Olivia. The velvet gaze of his brown eyes made her a little embarrassed. And Mel rambled on. I love parties. I went to one recently, invited by some guys from the physical education department. Music, wine, rock and roll. We had a great time. Do you go out? The question was directed at Olivia, but Mel didn't give her a chance to keep the conversation going. Nah, Olivia here prefers to read romance novels and cram for notes. I barely even got her out today. It's a crime on May holidays when everyone is out enjoying the warmth and spring sunshine, walking around with balloons and flags, having fun, to sit at home and read books. Stop it, Olivia tried to stop her, but Mel couldn't be deterred. I also really like picnics, she said cheerfully. How do you feel about going out, Kieran? I'm fine with it, he answered, not taking his eyes off Olivia. Why not? If there's some meat marinated with spices, a bottle of red wine, and good company. It's decided. Let's go to the countryside together, Mel suggested. Olivia looked at her reproachfully. How could she impose on a guy she didn't know? But to her surprise, Kieran agreed very willingly. Next Sunday we can go to the river, he said. You owe us appetizers, we owe you meat and wine. From who, you? Olivia didn't understand. You're the one who calls yourself you? No, of course not, the boy laughed. It just occurred to me to bring a good friend of mine along. They finished their ice cream and walked around the park some more. Kieran asked for Olivia's phone number as he said goodbye to the girls at the exit. The girl took out a small notebook from her purse, wrote down her home number, and tearing out a sheet of paper, gave it to Kieran. Where do you think you're going, girl? Nicole asked Olivia as she watched her granddaughter pick up the cheese and sausage sandwiches and put them in a container. Mel and I and the two boys are going to the river, Grandma Olivia said cheerfully. We're going to grill kebabs and have fun. I'm glad. It's high time you had a rest. You've been sitting at home like a recluse. Olivia threw on a light jacket over a white knit sweater, laced up her sneakers, and gave her grandmother a peck on the cheek. Bye, Grandma. Don't miss me, she said. Go with God, dear. The pensioner closed the door behind her granddaughter. Everything that was happening in Olivia's life worried her. Nicole had raised the girl alone since she was 5 years old. The woman's son and his wife had died, and she had gone completely gray overnight. It is not known how Nicole would have survived the death of her only son and his wife if she had not had a granddaughter in her arms. It was not easy, but she raised the girl in care and love. A former teacher of Russian language and literature, she was proud that Olivia followed in her footsteps and also decided to become a teacher. When she graduates from college, she will go to work at the school and help me. Nicole thought, looking out the window as her granddaughter walked across the yard with a small leather backpack on her shoulder. Mel caught up with Olivia on the way. They were walking together to the bus stop where they were supposed to meet the guys. Did you like Kieran? Mel asked her friend. Seems like a nice guy, she replied vaguely. How complicated things are with you, Olivia, exclaimed the girl. What do you mean good? I mean, do you like him as a man? I don't know. I like him a lot. Strong, handsome, sociable, and a military man. I wish I could marry him and become a general's wife. Olivia laughed at her friend's so far-reaching plans. To become a general's wife, you must first marry a lieutenant. I don't remember where I heard this clever phrase. I don't mind. Kieran and his buddy were already waiting for them at the bus stop. They had backpacks and a collapsible barbecue in their hands. Hi, girls, said Kieran. Meet Adrian. Mel. Olivia. Nice to meet you, Adrian smiled, looking at his girlfriends without embarrassment. So are we going? Kieran asked. The company headed towards the forest belt, beyond which the river flowed. The forest path was winding, leading deep into the forest, enticing the boys with the singing of birds and the sound of wind in the pine crowns. The place where the girls were led by the boys was very beautiful. The bank of the river, covered with young green grass, was strewn with dandelions. The rays of the sun were reflected in the water with shining sparkles, shimmering and rippling. The boys gathered wood from the forest and built a fire in a small brazier. The girls spread a blanket on the grass and laid out snacks. While Kieran put the meat on skewers, Adrian poured wine into plastic cups and served it to the girls. Victory Day is coming up, he said. I propose to drink to the military men who gave peace to our country. Great toast, Kieran seconded, but not very polite. Why is that? Adrian didn't understand. Because when there are girls in the company, the first toast is always to Mel ladies. Kieran looked meaningfully at Olivia. She seemed to him the heroine of a fairy tale. Her hair seemed golden in the bright sunlight, and her eyes were even more blue, like water in a river. And we don't pretend to be superior at all, so I suggest we combine the two toasts and drink to the military women who helped the bravest and most courageous men to defeat the enemy. What amazing ingenuity. Mel praised Adrian. The guys drank wine, chatted merrily, and enjoyed a pleasant conversation. The meat turned out very juicy and flavorful. The girls praised Kieran, who had prepared his own marinade for the kebab. Yes, Kieran has many talents, Adrian said. He is exceptional in general. And what is his exclusivity? Mel asked. Tell me, we know almost nothing about him or you. What can I tell you? He's a fine fellow. He'll make a model officer. Kieran is a man of his own principles, which I would not advise you to compromise. What kind of principles? Mel asked. For example, he won't lend money on principle. It's true, girls, you can't ask him to die. I even took offense at him at first. What's wrong with helping a friend? And a friend could spend less money instead of throwing it away left and right. Adrian smiled and rebuked Kieran for his wastefulness. He also believes that marriages are made for great and pure love. Isn't it? Kira argued with his friend. How can you create a strong family if you don't love a person? Come on, Adrian grumbled. Love is pure chemistry. You meet someone, look into his eyes, and a chemical reaction takes place. And then? And what next? Mel looked at the boy who spoke so boldly about love. And then? The brain shuts down, and uncontrollable things happen. Adrian rolled his eyes amusedly. Euphoria engulfs two people who are drowning in each other's arms. And then children. Common life, constant lack of money, snot, diapers, work, pots and pans, laundry. In short, this is how what in our world is called family life begins. Everyone laughed merrily at the theatricality of Adrian's speech. He was generally good at joking, easily picking up on any topic, and was cheerful throughout the picnic. Kieran, on the other hand, seemed thoughtful. He was watching Olivia very closely. Noticing this, she began to feel uncomfortable. She stood up and walked toward the river, squatting down and touching the water with her hand. Cold? She heard Kieran's voice behind her. Olivia stood up and turned around. Not really, but it's too early to swim. Kieran, Adrian shouted, Can't you swim across the river? What do you want to bet? Kieran asked. Easy. Adrian approached his friend. Or can't you do it? The boy started to take off his sweater and then his jeans. Kieran looked at Adrian, squinting his eyes. I accept the challenge, he finally answered and began pulling off his clothes. Guys, just kidding. That's enough. Olivia was worried. The water is so cold, you'll catch a cold. Come on, Olivia. The boys want to show who's braver and stronger. Let them fight for the victory. Mel stood next to her, excited for the exciting competition. What's the prize for the winner? Adrian asked. A kiss, of course. Without even thinking about it, the girl replied. Let's get this over with. Olivia was still trying to talk the boys out of this crazy idea. The river was small, but it was dangerous to stay in the cold water for long. Kieran, you seem like a sensible man. Please drop the argument. The guy came so close to her that she could hear him breathing. Olivia's heart sank. Don't be afraid of anything. I'll swim across, he said quietly and lightly touched the girl's cheek with his fingers. Olivia froze, feeling the color spill down her cheeks, but Kieran was already walking toward the water. He and Adrian jumped into the water and swam to the opposite shore. The girls froze in impatience, wondering when they would get there and not have to worry. At one point, Adrian pulled ahead, but Kieran quickly caught up with him and overtook him, and then his head disappeared beneath the surface of the water. Olivia gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. He drowned, Mel. No, it'll come out. Trust me, she said, staring off into the distance, her hand over her eyes as she shielded her eyes from the glare of the sun. Where are you? Kieran, show yourself already. But Kieran was nowhere to be seen. The minutes dragged by slowly. It seemed like an eternity had passed when the boy's head appeared on the surface. He was 10 or 15 meters ahead of Adrian and reached the shore very quickly. Kieran stepped onto dry land and waved to the girls, who didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In the few minutes it took for the boy to disappear under the water, they had become very nervous. Fool, Olivia said quietly. Cool. Shaking her head, Mel said. When Adrian also appeared on the opposite bank, the girls had already calmed down. They saw the friends shake hands and walk along the bank toward the automobile bridge. After about an hour, they returned to the picnic site. Olivia was packing her things, empty containers and dishes into her backpack. Her whole demeanor showed that she was upset, hurt, and about to leave, but Kieran didn't seem to notice. "Where's my prize?" he asked cheerfully. "I'm waiting for a kiss." Olivia saw Mel jump up to him, put her arms around his neck, and kissed him right on the lips. "You're a real hero," said the girl enthusiastically. "Olivia, aren't you going to kiss the winner?" Kieran asked, but the girl only took her backpack in her hands and walked towards the forest. She decided to leave. Her head was a little dizzy from the wine she'd drunk, and she was beginning to ache from the experience. Olivia stepped out onto the path they'd taken to the shore and headed into the woods with a determined stride. She was angry at the guys who'd made her worry, at Milka, who could kiss a guy she didn't know so easily, at herself for being shy and timid. The girl didn't notice that she had stumbled and twisted her foot. A sharp pain made her crouch on the ground. Olivia felt her ankle, her hands touching it painfully. She tried to get up but immediately sat back down, groaning in pain and helplessness. She couldn't walk any further. Olivia realized she had gone too far to call for help. The boys wouldn't hear her voice in the thicket of centuries-old pines. Olivia cried. "Why do I always have bad luck?" she thought. The day had started out so well, and then the boys had gotten into this stupid contest and she was in such a bad mood. And now her leg. Olivia heard the crunch of twigs and turned around. Kieran was walking down the path. When he saw the girl, he ran up to her. "Olivia, what's wrong? Why are you crying?" "I twisted my leg. It hurt," she complained, wiping her tears and sniffling her nose. "Let me see," he said, lifted the pant leg on her ankle and touched it with his hand. Olivia froze as she felt his touch. It excited her. She jerked her foot away, startled by the sensation, and moaned again. "I see," said Kieran. "Can you stand up?" He lifted her to her feet, then picked her up and carried her down the path in his arms. Kieran's strong arms cradled Olivia so tightly that she didn't even resist, trusting him. Kieran carried Olivia all the way to the house, and then lifted her, carrying her in his arms, to the 4th floor. Grandmother opened the door. "Oh my God, what happened?" She splayed her hands, clearing the passage. "I twisted my leg," Grandma Olivia replied. Kieran walked into the room and sat her down on the couch. Sweat was beading on his forehead. Only now did Olivia realize how much strength it had taken for him to come all this way carrying her. "We should call an ambulance," Nicole said worriedly. "Don't," the boy stopped her. "Do you have a bandage?" It was in the medicine cabinet somewhere. Nicole opened the cupboard and pulled out the shoebox that held the medicine. A moment later, Kieran was applying a tight bandage to Olivia's ankle. "I'll fix the leg and you just keep it off for a few days and the pain will go away," he said, cutting the tip of the bandage. "Grandma, I forgot to introduce you." Olivia remembered that she hadn't even introduced her savior to her grandmother. "This is Kieran. We went on a picnic together." "I'm Nicole." Grandma smiled. "Why didn't you look after Olivia, Kieran?" The boy looked embarrassed but didn't lower his eyes, just looked at Olivia. "It's my own fault, Grandma," she said. "Now I'll stay at home all the holidays." A boiling kettle whistled longingly in the kitchen. "Young man, I'll ask you to move the table to the couch, and I'll bring everything to tea," Nicole said, nodding at the coffee table in the corner. "I'll make tea with strawberry jam for the hero and savior. Do you like strawberry jam?" "I love it," Kieran replied cheerfully. A few minutes later, they were having tea. Kieran could see how proud Nicole was of her granddaughter. She gladly pulled out an album and showed him Olivia's baby pictures, which embarrassed the girl. "Look, Kieran, how funny she is here with the huge bows," Grandma said, pointing her finger at the black and white picture. "I took her to the 1st grade, and here we went to the sea with her. And this is the graduation. Isn't she beautiful?" Kieran nodded, looking at the picture of a pretty girl with a braid over her shoulder. They chatted some more, and Kieran got ready to leave. "Can I come visit you sometime? You know, to see how your leg is?" he asked Olivia. "Come, I'll be waiting," she said it so easily, so naturally, as if she and Kieran were old friends. Olivia wished he would come and see her. And when the grandmother slammed the door behind the boy and came back into the room, she found her granddaughter smiling. She was sitting with her legs stretched out and resting it on the stool Kieran had carefully placed before he left. In her hands was a teddy bear, once given to her by her parents. "Are you keeping a secret with your favorite teddy bear?" Nicole asked, smiling. "Don't you want to share it with me?" "With what?" "Like how and where did you meet this Kieran guy?" "In the park, Grandma. Why didn't you like him?" The girl was suddenly worried, afraid that her grandmother would find faults in Kieran. "Not at all," replied the pensioner. "Nice guy. Have a good time, baby." Nicole left the room, closing the door behind her. After a while, Olivia heard her humming something in the kitchen. Grandma always sang when she put the dough in, so it's going to be pies tonight, Olivia thought, closed her eyes, and fell into a happy, deep sleep. The next day she waited for a call from Kieran, but he didn't call. Busy, probably, Olivia thought. She spent the rest of the day reading. In the evening, Mel dropped by. As usual, brightly painted in a miniskirt and a blouse with a décolletage that showed off her ample breasts, she made the quiet atmosphere of the apartment noisy and cheerful. "It's your own fault," she reprimanded Olivia for leaving the picnic, twirling in front of the mirror. "If you'd stayed with us, none of this would have happened. Thank Kieran for finding you so quickly." "Yeah, he's good," Olivia said thoughtfully. Mel looked at her carefully. "Hey girlfriend, you're not in love, are you?" she asked with a sly squint of her eyes. "I didn't want to be in love with you," Olivia said, and I felt her cheeks reddening. "Kieran's a really nice guy, the kind of guy you could fall in love with. He brought me home, sat me right here, bandaged my leg." "Well, you know, Adrian's just as good," Mel said with her arms at her sides. "He walked me home, too, and came to visit." "He was visiting you?" Olivia wondered. "Why?" "We still have some wine left." Mel plopped down on the couch with her friend and suddenly covered her face with her hands. "Olivia, we had everything with him. Everything, you know. He left me just before morning." Olivia gawked at her friend. Mel, of course, was a flighty girl who did crazy things all the time, but to sleep with a guy they'd just met a few hours ago. Olivia couldn't get her head around that. "Did he confess his love to you?" she asked Mel, hoping that at least it wasn't just a fling under the influence of good mood and alcohol, but the beginning of a long and serious relationship. "Are you two together now?" "I don't know." Mel took her hands away from her face and stared thoughtfully at the TV. "I don't know." Mel removed her palms from her face and stared thoughtfully at the TV. "Then why did you let him in?" "What's the big deal? You can't die from lack of male affection. As you know, it's a fish out of water." "What cancer? What fish? What are you talking about?" Olivia shrieked. "If he slept with you, he must be serious." "Yeah, you think Mishka from gym class had intentions too? And Kolka from law school? If all the guys I slept with married me, I'd be a sultaness with my own harem of men." Mel and Olivia laughed. Indeed, the boys were paying attention to the bright and cheerful Mel, and she was in no hurry to drive them away from her. But Adrian had more than caught Olivia's friend's eye. She really wanted to continue her relationship with him and maybe even get married. However, Adrian simply kissed Mel on the cheek and said bye without saying anything about a new meeting, but she hoped that he would call and ask her out on a date. Olivia and Nicole were going to spend Victory Day watching movies. There were a lot of old and new war movies on the program. They sat comfortably on the couch, teacups and cakes on the table in front of them. Olivia didn't feel like going outside, even though she and her grandmother went to watch the parade in the town square every year. And this time, Nicole was feeling healthy. "I'd better stay home and watch the parade on TV," she said to Olivia. "Do you think your Kieran is marching in the parade now?" "Why is he mine?" Olivia was outraged. He hadn't even called in a week. "Okay, she'll worry, call again, or come over. Hello, here I am." Nicole smiled. Her girl seemed to really miss her new acquaintance. Olivia and her grandmother hadn't even had a cup of tea yet when the doorbell rang in their apartment. "I'll get it," she said, Her leg wasn't aching anymore, and Olivia was able to get around the house just fine. She opened the door and was stunned. Kieran stood on the threshold. He was so handsome, and handsome in his military uniform, smiling so charmingly that Olivia couldn't hide her joy. "Hey," he said. "Happy holidays." Kieran handed Olivia the box of cake. She took it and stood there, smiling. "Can I come in?" Kieran asked, and Olivia snapped out of her stupor and led him into the hallway. "Grandma," she shouted, "we have guests. Come in, we're having tea, you're just in time." Nicole looked out of the room. "Young man, you're on parade today." She gave him an approving glance. "And then on parade, and on parade," laughed the boy. "We've been preparing for the festive march all week, and we haven't had time to visit you at all." "We're not offended," the pensioner waved her hand, "although someone here missed you very much." "Bah," Olivia yanked her back. "What a BA. Go to the kitchen. Get another cup and saucer for our wonderful guest. We'll celebrate Victory Day." Olivia's grandmother definitely liked Kieran. She suddenly sounded very tired and sent her granddaughter and her boyfriend out for a walk. "I'll lie down for a while, rest in silence," and you go, "There are people having fun. Artists probably perform." Kieran and Olivia walked around the city until late afternoon. They watched the performance of various amateur groups, went on rides in the park, and fed the ducks on the pond. The boy and girl did not even notice how it got dark outside, and citizens began to gather on the square to watch the fireworks. Olivia looked at the colorful scatterings with her head tilted back, and Kieran couldn't take his eyes off her delighted face. He mentally said, "How beautiful you are, Olivia," and it turned out he'd said it out loud. Olivia looked from the night sky, lit up by the salutes, to Kieran. "What did you say?" she asked. "I didn't quite hear it well." "I love you," Kieran said, and kissed her on the lips. When she got home, Olivia was over the moon. Her grandmother was watching TV, but when her granddaughter appeared in the doorway, she turned it off by pressing a button on the remote control. Grandma Olivia rushed over to Nicole and hugged her. "I'm so happy you can't even imagine." "Why can't I?" "Yes, I can. You think I wasn't in love?" "Kieran told me he loved me." "He's a good guy, he won't hurt you," said Grandma. "Don't hurt him either. Appreciate what you have between you." It was a hot summer, with almost no rain at all. The residents of the city were suffering from the heat, escaping the scorching rays in the shade of trees, in parks near fountains, and on the river bank. The forecasters' predictions were disappointing. The heat would last for several more weeks. "Would you like some ice cream?" Kieran asked Olivia. "I can't eat it anymore." She looked at the boy with a pleading look. "Every day only ice cream saves me from this heat." "Do you want to go somewhere?" Kieran asked. "Like where?" Kieran had a vacation after graduating from the academy, and Olivia was on vacation. They were completely free and spent almost all their time together, dreaming about the future, making plans together. "If you want, we could go north," Kieran suggested, and Olivia couldn't tell if he was joking or serious. "To the polar bears," she laughed. "We can go to the south. We will swim in the sea and sunbathe on the beach under the southern sun," offered another option, beloved girl. Kieran, the words sun, tan, beach make my eye twitch. "Well, I'm sorry, but I just want somewhere to be with you, you know." So that there was no one else at all, he hugged and kissed the girl. "Come on, let's go to a campground. There is a great place outside the city. There are houses, forest, river." "It's a good idea," Olivia agreed, but she felt a sudden fear, a bad feeling, and clung tighter to Kieran. The next day, the two of them took an electric train out of town. The administrator of the camp met them at the gate. "I'll show you around," the young man said, inviting you to follow him. "I understand you booked a cabin away from everyone else, so I left you that apartment over there." He pointed toward the forest and led Olivia and Kieran to their cabin. It was small, surrounded by pine trees. There was one large room with a couch, a table, and a large bed. "Here is the tea station." The administrator showed a kettle and a box with tea bags. "You can use it. The canteen is open on schedule. You can buy drinks, pastries, some food from morning till evening in the cafeteria. After dinner, there is dancing on the grounds. Come along if you want to have fun. Oh yeah, linens are in the closet. Towels are there too. Make yourself comfortable, and if you need anything, call me. The young man left, remembering to close the door behind him. Olivia sighed, looking around. What are we going to do? She asked. To walk, rest, and enjoy each other, Kieran answered. He wanted them to remember the weekend spent at the camping site, because he was going to say the most important words to his favorite girl. I feel uneasy, Olivia said quietly. Worried about Grandma? Thinking about how she's going to be alone without you? I don't know. Something just came up. Well, I'll try to take your mind off your sad feelings, said Kieran. The first item on our cultural program is a trip to the river. They spent the whole day walking through the woods, boating on the river, swimming in water as warm as milk. Olivia and Kieran even skipped lunch, eating the pies that the caring Nicole had put in her bag. When it got dark, the boy and the girl sat on a bench near their cabin, admiring the stars and kissing. Kieran hesitated to tell Olivia the important news, afraid that she would be upset. Is something bothering you? Olivia noticed her lover's condition. Yeah, we're going to have to break up. The girl pulled back and looked into Kieran's eyes, and he realized he'd picked the wrong words. No, you misunderstood. I'm going on a business trip. For how long? Olivia asked. I don't know, maybe 6 months, maybe a year. The girl knew that there was a military conflict in one of the friendly countries, and that troops were being sent there to settle the unrest. But she had never thought that it would affect her and Kieran. When? Olivia asked, hoping that the moment of parting wouldn't come soon enough. The day after tomorrow, the boy lowered his head. If you only knew how hard it would be for me to leave you, I'd go crazy. Olivia put her palms to his face and looked into his eyes with a loving gaze full of concern, understanding, tenderness. When I come back, you and I will get married. I promise you. I love you very much, she said quietly, almost in a whisper, and then added, let's go. Olivia took Kieran's hand and led him into the house. She slowly undid the buttons of her dress and slid it to the floor, revealing a slender body in white lace lingerie. Give me this night, Olivia said. I'll be waiting for you, remembering every moment, every second. The lovers didn't sleep a wink until morning. They caressed each other again and again, plunging into the abyss of passion. 2 months had passed. Olivia stood in the bathroom mirror and looked at her face. Blue circles under her eyes, sunken cheeks, pale skin. She didn't look good. She moved her gaze to the sink, where a pregnancy test lay on the edge. 2 stripes were clearly visible against the white background. She was going to have a baby, a part of the person she loved. But Olivia was more worried than happy. Kieran hadn't sent a single letter, and she'd checked the mailbox several times each day. There were no phone calls, no messages either. Once, when she met Adrian, Kieran's friend, on the street, Olivia asked him if he had any news. But the guy shook his head, for some reason averting his gaze. The girl understood that in hot spots. There was no time to think about girls and love relationships, but it was possible to find a minute to scribble a couple of lines, everything is fine. I love you. I miss you. And now this pregnancy. Olivia thought about how to tell her grandmother so she wouldn't worry her too much. Nicole had been complaining more and more lately about her heart and high blood pressure. Olivia had called the ambulance again yesterday, and the doctors had insisted on hospitalization, but Grandma had flatly refused. I will die at home, not in a government bed, she said, barely able to move her tongue, and signed her refusal with a weak hand. When she left for the institute, Olivia was always worried whether something had happened at home or how her grandmother was doing. The anxiety for her nearest and dearest people kept her from concentrating on the lectures. Mel was always trying to get Olivia to wake up. Wake up, everyone's looking at you, she said as the entire audience stared at the girl, who had her eyes closed and was mumbling something under her breath. Olivia's friend sighed and shook her head. You can't torture yourself like this. But there was no shadow of the old Olivia, the Olivia with whom they'd gone out in the evenings, shared secrets and made plans for the future. Olivia seemed petrified. "Olivia, what took you so long in the bathroom?" she heard Nicole's voice. "Breakfast is on the table. Hurry up or you'll be late for school." Olivia sat down at the table and reached for a sandwich. But when she felt a nasty lump in her throat, she put the piece of loaf with cheese and sausage back on the plate. After she drank her coffee, she kissed her grandmother and walked out the door. On the way to the institute, the girl met her friend. Mel stood near the entrance to the building and smoked a cigarette. When she saw Olivia, she waved at her. "There won't be a first class," Mel said. "The teacher's sick, so we can go shopping." She tossed the cigarette butt away and slung her bag over her shoulder. She noticed that Olivia was in no mood again. Mel understood that she missed Kieran, that she was in love, that she was in love, that she was waiting to hear from him, but she thought she shouldn't be so upset. "Nothing again?" she asked her friend. "No, there's other news though." "Well, what's the news?" Mel tugged on Olivia's arm. "I'm pregnant." The girl pulled a test out of her purse and showed it to her friend. "Shit, how could you do that?" Mel said, surprised and frustrated. "How?" Olivia didn't understand. "Careless, that's how." Mel handed the test back to Olivia and reached for the pack of cigarettes that was sticking out of the pocket of her bag. "Stop smoking," Mel, her friend, told her. "I just threw it out." "I'm allowed. I'm not pregnant, ... thank God." "What are you going to do? You're not going to have a baby alone with no husband, no money, and no education, are you?" "I'm going to," Olivia said quietly. "You can't kill a child for lack of money and unfinished education. It wasn't his fault." "Oh, come on." Mel waved her off. "What baby? There's a little pea in there yet. Don't be a fool. I have a phone number of a good friend. She will arrange everything, but you'll have to pay. Do you have money?" Olivia was silent, absorbed in herself. She heard her friend's words, but they sounded distant, barely audible. "I said I had money to pay for the abortion." Mel shook Olivia's arm, trying to shake her out of her stupor. "I'm not having an abortion," Olivia said. "It's my and Kieran's baby. It has to be born." "You're an idiot," Mel exclaimed. "Where's your Kieran? No? And what makes you think he wants that baby? Did he ask you to bear him children? Or maybe he promised to marry you?" "Kieran will come back and everything will be fine. And I will give birth and wait with the baby for him." In the evening, Nicole and Olivia watched TV together. The girl thought about how to present the news so that her grandmother wouldn't get too excited, but she didn't even have to say anything. Nicole, who had raised her granddaughter since she was a little girl, knew her too well. "Are you thinking about how to tell me about the delay?" she asked, keeping her eyes on the TV screen. Olivia was silent. Her grandmother's foresight, her gift of sensing the state of her beloved granddaughter, always amazed the girl. "You're worried," Olivia, wondering what to do. How to move on, right? "Okay, Grandma. But and it is possible not to think, but just to live. You should not try to rewrite your destiny. It is written long before the birth of any person by someone from above. You are doing a thankless job by racking your brains, doubting, thinking over every next step." "What should I do, Grandma?" Olivia suddenly put her head down on Nicole's shoulder, and Nicole put her arms around her and stroked her head. "Just to live," the pensioner replied calmly. "To live and enjoy every new day." "What do you think Kieran would say if he found out we were having a baby together?" Olivia asked, looking into Nina Petrovna's eyes. "I would say the same thing. You have to live and raise a child, love those who deserve it, and make each of their days better, happier." "I'm scared." "Don't worry, you'll give birth by the end of the course. You'll be with your baby all summer, and then I'll help you. I'll take care of the baby while you're at the institute. Then you'll get your diploma, and that's it." "What if Kieran doesn't accept the baby?" "Don't think about it. It's going to be okay." The new year was approaching. The streets of the city were covered with illuminations. A huge Christmas tree was put up in the center, shining with thousands of lights, and the counters of stores were bursting with New Year's goods clappers, sparklers, glittering balls, and soft toys. Olivia and Nicole pulled out a plastic Christmas tree and began to decorate it. Your parents brought this tree back from vacation, my grandmother recalled. Now it is no longer fashionable, but back then few people had such trees. Don't throw it away when I die. Let it be a memory. Don't talk. She's going to die, Olivia said, half jokingly, half seriously. Have you forgotten how you promised to help me with the baby? It's not like I'm going to die next year, Nicole laughed. The news was on the television. The announcer, in an elegant blue suit and tie, was saying something, but Olivia wasn't listening, only catching some of the phrases. Suddenly she shouted, "BA, turn up the sound," and she got off the stool she had climbed on to put a star on top of the tree. More than 50 of our soldiers and officers are missing. Their fate is still unknown. In other news,
Grabbing the remote, Olivia began to press the buttons, switching channels, hoping to find a newscast somewhere else. But in vain. The end of a sentence the newscaster said made her uneasy. Apparently they were talking about the military sent to settle a localized conflict. Kieran could have been there. That explained why there were no letters or messages from the boy.
Olivia sat down on the couch, her heart racing. She reached for the table where the pitcher of water stood, but suddenly passed out. I'm awake. A man in a white coat leaned over Olga. How do you feel? It's fine, Olivia said, trying to get up from the couch.
You're lying down. You don't have to get up. The doctor returned her to the pillow with a gentle but insistent motion of his hand. You're lying down. The doctor gently but insistently moved his hand back to her pillow.
What's wrong with me? I understand that you were worried and fainted. There is no threat of abortion, but I would recommend that you lie down, rest, and don't be nervous. Don't watch TV. It's only bad for you, the doctor smiled. Better listen to music. Which one? Olivia didn't understand.
Anything that gives you pleasure. Turn around, we'll give you a shot. It's a sedative, don't worry.
The EMT and paramedic said goodbye to Olivia and Nicole, wished them health and a happy new year, and left. You scared me. Girl grandma shook her head. She covered her with a blanket, turned on the wall lamp, and sat down in the armchair. Grandmother, do you think he's missing too? Olivia asked. We don't know, Mel. Let's hope all is well. Your Kieran comes back. By the end of winter, Olivia was no longer hiding her position. Her belly was clearly protruding, growing larger with each passing week. She carried the pregnancy easily, successfully passing her classes and studying for exams. And when the baby kicked her for the first time with its little foot, she circled the significant day in her grandmother's wall calendar with a red felt-tip pen. There was still no word from Kieran.
Mel, can you ask Adrian to ask around about Kieran amongst his contacts? They went to school together, so maybe someone knows something? Olivia asked her friend.
Adrian who? Mel didn't immediately realize who her friend was talking about. Oh, that Adrian. I haven't seen him for a long time.
What? Aren't you two together? Olivia wondered. I thought.
What's there to think about? We slept together a few times, and then I got bored with him. He doesn't take me to a restaurant, he doesn't take me out, he doesn't have much money, he doesn't give me presents. I like it better with Vincent from journalism school. You know what kind of car he has? It's so hot. Mel continued to talk about her new lover, and Olivia wondered if she should go to the academy herself. Maybe they knew something about her lover. The next day she was already standing at the checkpoint. The officer on duty demanded a pass, which the girl, of course, did not have. Not without a pass, he kept saying the same thing when Olivia asked him to let her through. I need to know about one man, she begged. He was sent on a business trip, and I haven't heard from him in 6 months. I can't help you. If you get a pass, I'll let you in. But in the meantime, get out of here. You're not supposed to be here. Olivia turned and walked away, but the clerk suddenly called out to her. Girl, try to go to the military enlistment office. They should know about everyone who. Well, you know where. Thank you, Olivia thanked him, and she headed off to the enlistment office. As she got on the bus, she wondered why she hadn't thought of it before. Only the military could tell what happened to those who were sent on a business trip. And who will you be to him? The captain asked Olivia in the duty room through a window with an iron grill.
The girl is confused. She's basically nobody to him. A close acquaintance, you know? We only give information about military personnel to relatives. The captain looked at her with a cold stare. It seemed that even Olivine's pleading eyes couldn't break through that ice block.
The girl came out of the building. A woman was sobbing nearby, trying to comfort her, and a young man was standing nearby. "Did something happen to you?" Olivia asked. "Should I call an ambulance?" The guy looked at her, shook his head. "No, I called a cab. It's coming. I'm taking my mom home. My brother died on a business trip in a hot spot. We just found out." Olivia's legs felt woozy. What if Kieran did too? She squeezed her eyes shut. No, not that. He was fine. She would feel it. She couldn't help but feel it.
Completely frustrated, Olivia returned home. Nicole was lying on the couch. A tonometer and several packets of pills on a stool next to her.
"Grandma, what?" "Blood pressure." Olivia rushed to her grandmother. "Yes, baby," Grandma said quietly. "I've had some medicine. It'll make me feel better. I'll call the doctors."
Don't bother people," Nicole stopped her. "It'll pass."
"You tell me if it gets worse, okay?" said the girl. "I'll tell you to go eat. There's soup on the stove and cutlets. Go on, Mel." Nicole closed her eyes. Olivia adjusted the blanket and went into the kitchen. She was really hungry. The girl heated up some soup, cut off a few slices of fresh bread. Having eaten quietly, she washed the dishes behind her. Trying not to make any noise, Olivia tiptoed into the room where her grandmother slept. With a glance at the old woman, she walked to her room and lay down. Tired from the long walk, Olivia fell into a deep sleep very quickly. When she opened her eyes, it was already dark outside the window. The girl got up, drew the curtains, and turned on the light in the room. Her grandmother must still be asleep because no sounds were heard. Olivia went into her room and called out, "Bah, are you asleep?" There was no answer.
Olivia moved closer to Nicole and took her hand. The palm was icy, lifeless.
"Granny, wake up, Granny." The girl touched her cheeks, shoulders, shook her arm, but the old woman didn't show any signs of life. Olivia called an ambulance and the doctors diagnosed a heart attack. After the grandmother was taken to the morgue, the girl called a friend. "Mel, please come, please. Grandma's dead," she said quietly. In half an hour, Mel was already sitting next to her, hugging Olivia. She didn't cry, she just wanted someone to be there for her. And she had no one else but Mel and Kieran.
A month had passed since his grandmother's death. Olivia was coming home from the institute. From week to week, it was already time for her to give birth. The women's clinic even suggested that she go to the maternity hospital.
"You'll take vitamins, get drips, prepare your uterus for labor," the midwife told her. But Olivia refused. She needed to take as many credits as possible, close all her debts at the institute, and consult with her academic assistant about whether she should take a sabbatical or whether she could write and defend her diploma without a year's break. Thinking about all this, Olivia didn't notice when a beautiful blue foreign car pulled up next to her and a familiar male voice called her name. "Olivia, hi. Don't you recognize any old friends?" The girl slowed down and turned her head at the voice. Adrian jumped out of the car. He looked stunning: black suit, snow-white shirt, shined shoes. "Hi, Adrian. What a meeting." Olivia rejoiced. She hadn't seen Kieran's friend in a long time. The thought flashed through her mind that maybe he knew something about her lover. "What's up? How's life?" Adrian asked, hugging Olivia lightly around the shoulders. "I see you're doing well. When are you due?" "Soon enough." "Come on. I'll give you a ride," Adrian offered and pulled the girl by the arm. Olivia tried to refuse, saying it was good for her to walk, but Adrian was adamant. He opened the car door and gently placed Olivia in the front seat, then walked around to the driver's seat. "Shall we?" He was still as cheerful as the first time Olivia had seen Adrian. "How are you, Olivia?" Adrian asked, turning onto the avenue. "I know about your grandmother. My condolences." "Thank you. I'm fine. I'm going into labor any day now. The baby is kicking so much I can't take it anymore. And I can't wait to see him. Adrian smiled and nodded his head, looking at the road. How are you doing? Olivia asked him. Working, the guy replied uncertainly. Did I? I thought you were going to serve. I haven't seen you in a long time. I thought you'd been assigned somewhere. That's what happened. They were going to send him to the Caucasus, Adrian replied. My father got involved. He gave someone some money and put him to work for his old friend's company as head of security.
Do they pay well? Olivia didn't know why she'd asked that question, probably just to keep the conversation going.
I'm fine. I have enough to live on, Adrian replied. Here we are. The car stopped in the driveway. The guy looked at the girl, smiled. Will you invite me for tea? Let's have a little chat. Come on. I don't really have anything for tea, Olivia said. You don't have to. Adrian opened the door, helped Olivia out of the car, and with a click of the remote, locked the car doors. They reached the 4th floor and Olivia pulled her keys out of her purse. How do you get up to the floor with a belly like that? It must be hard, isn't it? Adrian asked. And if you're carrying bags when you come from the store? I don't store much, Olivia said, smiling. Why? I don't need much, and I don't have much money. You can't get by on a scholarship, even if it's an extra one. She opened the door and invited Adrian in. The guy was visiting Olivia for the first time. He noticed that the girl didn't live very well. And where would the wealth come from? At least her grandmother used to get a pension every month, but now it's become difficult. Adrian walked around the apartment. The furniture was old, but well maintained. The wallpaper had not been reglued for a long time, and the television set. Such things were rarely found in the apartments of city dwellers. I'll put the kettle on now, Olivia said. Pouring tea into cups, she asked Adrian. Have you heard anything about Kieran? The boy looked at Olivia carefully. Beautiful, even despite her huge belly, she looked at him, trying to hide her anxiety. She wasn't very good at it. I didn't want to bring it up with you first, but I knew you would. Olivia sat on a stool, stirring her tea slowly with a spoon, her head bowed slightly. Her bangs fell over her eyes, and she fixed them with a light hand. Adrian had a hard time fighting the urge to run his hand through those straw-colored curls. He liked Olivia a lot.
Do you know anything about him? Olivia looked up at the boy.
Not specifically about him, Adrian replied. But they say that the whole company was killed.
Olivia covered her mouth with the palm of her hand to keep from shrieking.
This can't be. I believe in the best, too. After all, Kira and I were friends. I went to the military enlistment office. They said they don't give information to strangers. And there was a woman crying. Her son had been killed on that business trip. They don't disclose information so as not to worry people, Adrian said sadly, but rumors spread faster than television news. Can your father find out anything about Kieran through his own channels? Olivia dared to ask Adrian. She knew that his father was not the last man in town, had extensive, very useful connections.
I'll ask Olivia. I promise. Adrian finished his tea and got ready to leave. I gotta go. Business. Can I write down your phone number and you can keep mine? In case you need it.
Of course, Olivia said with hope in her voice. Maybe Adrian would know something and call her. They exchanged phone numbers and the guy left. Olivia sat down on the couch thinking. They were friends, but they were very different.
The next day, Olivia's phone rang. She was about to go to bed, having just gotten out of the shower.
I'm listening, she replied. Hi, it's Adrian. She heard the phone ring. Olivia's heart raced, wondering if he'd found out something about Kieran.
Yes, Adrian, go ahead. Are you still awake? Can I come in? I'm right here, at your doorstep.
Sure, come on up, Olivia said, and she hurried to throw on a robe over her nightgown. Adrian walked into the hallway carrying 2 huge bags and pulled them in front of the girl. Here, the humanitarian aid has reached you. Smiling happily, he said.
The boy took off his shoes and strode into the kitchen. Olivia watched in amazement as he put meat, sausage, cottage cheese, milk, candy, canned goods, several kinds of cheese, juices, tea, coffee. The groceries didn't fit on the table anymore, but he kept putting them out of the bags.
What is it, Adrian? The girl asked in surprise. I told you, humanitarian aid. After finishing the groceries, he sat down on a stool. I didn't ask. Why?
Olivia, I just wanted to help you and make you happy, Adrian said. His words sounded sincere, kind, and the smile stayed on his face. Olivia wanted to scold him at first to make him take it all back, but when she saw how pleased he was to do something for her, she melted. Well, let me at least give you some tea, she said, turning on the gas stove and filling the kettle with water.
Can we have coffee? Adrian asked. I have to be on duty with my men until morning today. The chief has come up with some kind of reinforcement, so we'll be waiting for the enemies until morning.
What enemies? Olivia didn't understand. She was even a little worried. I'm just kidding, the boy said. They just asked me to be on duty until morning.
They drank tea and talked, but Olivia waited for Adrian to find out something about Kieran and tell her. Finally, when she couldn't bear it, she asked him directly. The boy grew sad for a moment. He seemed to be struggling to find his words.
You don't have to wait for Kieran anymore, Olivia, he said finally. No one has any other information. It's all confirmed.
What was confirmed? Olivia didn't want to believe the worst thing that could happen to her lover. Kieran is gone. In one ravine, our military found more than 20 decapitated bodies, officially recognized as the bodies of dead men from Kieran's company. I'm sorry.
Olivia covered her face with her hands, crying bitterly. Adrian stood up, walked over to her, and put his arm around her shoulders. Suddenly she cried out, and clutched her stomach. Oh, Mummy. It hurts, Olivia moaned. Oh, I think I'm in labor. I'll call an ambulance, Adrian frantically searched for his phone. No, I'd rather drive myself. It would be quicker that way. He helped the girl get dressed and went down to the car, calming her down, saying some ridiculous words that everything would be fine soon. At the same time cursing at the careless drivers who were obstructing the traffic, Adrian pressed the gas pedal. Soon the car entered the courtyard of the maternity hospital and slowed down at the steps. The boy jumped out, opened the door to help Olivia, and gently led her into the waiting room.
Anybody there? He shouted. There's a girl in labor here. On a sunny April morning, Olivia sat in a hospital bed holding her baby boy. The baby had been born strong and healthy. Black hairs tousled on his head, just like Daddy, Olivia thought as she stroked her son, holding him to her chest. Her heart was full of love for this little man, the most dear to her in the world. The door to the room opened and a nurse came in. She was holding a huge bouquet of roses in a bag. Pravushina, Olivia, there's a message for you, said an old woman. Look at the flowers they're carrying for moms now, 100 of them in a bouquet. In the past, fathers would come to the window, pick daisies and dandelions from the flower beds, and their grandmothers would rejoice, as if they had brought flowers. They loved them. Nanechka laughed, put the bouquet on the nightstand, and put the bag on her neighbor's nightstand.
Who's it from? Olivia asked.
A representative, in a suit, said that the note was in the bouquet, but he went under the windows, it seems, said the nurse.
Olivia put the baby in the cuvette and herself took a small card out of the bouquet of roses. Congratulations on your son. Look out the window, she read the message, written in beautiful, even handwriting. Adjusting the robe across her chest, Olivia walked over to the windowsill. A smiling Adrian was standing below. When he saw the girl, he waved his arms. The guy shouted something, but Olivia could hardly hear anything. The windows in the ward were closed. Then Adrian ran to the car and opened the trunk. From there, he pulled out a luxurious, very expensive baby stroller, blue in color. But
Olivia watched in amazement as he showed her the different positions: a stroller for stroller sleep, a car cradle, a carrier, And this is how you can carry a baby when they're already sitting up. Suddenly, Adrian slipped his hand into his pocket and showed Olivia his cell phone. He dialed her number, and the room resounded with the sound of an incoming call. "Why did you spend so much money?" Olivia asked with a laugh. "It's a very expensive stroller. I wouldn't spare anything for your baby. He'll ride like a real king."
"Thank you so much," Olivia thanked him. For what?
"For everything." Adrian looked at her and was silent. Skinny, pale after childbirth, in her hospital gown, she was so touching, so real, so tender, so desirable. "I'm right here. Call me if you need me," he said calmly, emotionless. And then he was gone. Adrian waved to Olivia, got in his car, and drove out of the hospital yard. The girl looked thoughtfully at the car as it drove away. "I wonder why things didn't work out with Mel. Adrian is so caring and open." She remembered her friend and decided to call her and tell her the news. Anticipating how happy Mel would be to hear that Olivia had given birth, how she would start asking questions, she dialed her friend's number. No one answered for a long time, and then she heard some unintelligible sounds. Olivia thought something was wrong with the connection and decided to call later.
On the day of discharge from the maternity hospital, Olivia and the baby were met by Adrian. Over the next few days, the young mum hadn't been able to reach Mel. At first, she was a little worried about why her friend didn't contact her, but then she decided that Mel had found a boyfriend again and was head over heels in a relationship. So she couldn't be bothered with Olivia. It wasn't just Olivia who was having a party. As soon as they heard the music, women in labour and other wards of the hospital leaned against the windows. In the courtyard of the hospital, the musicians were ready to play a touching song on command. Fountains of balloons and fresh flowers were set up around the hospital.
"What a celebration yours made for your discharge." The midwife shook her head approvingly. "A caring father, there aren't many like him nowadays. Most of them come drunk or, at best, hungover." Olivia didn't bother to reassure the doctor that it wasn't the baby's father. Why would she? It was a complete stranger, and she didn't need to know the details of the patient's personal life. For a moment, she thought about Kieran. Why fate was so cruel and he died without even recognizing that he had a son. It was a pity for Olivia, and that the grandmother wouldn't get to see her great-grandson.
"Look, are all the body parts in place?" jokingly asked the midwife, undressing the boy. "Here are the hands, here are the hands, here are the feet. There are 5 fingers everywhere. Look at him, he is smiling. He understands that he will go home with Mummy and Daddy."
The woman began to dress the newborn, and when she finished tying a beautiful bow on the envelope, she said, "Hold your happiness tight. Grow up healthy and come back for your second."
Olivia thanked the midwife, and they walked out onto the porch of the birthing centre together.
At that moment, music came on and a handsome male baritone began to play. The love song moved Olivia so much that she even wept. Adrian walked over and embraced the baby. The staff was in tears at the touching scene, which was watched by the entire maternity ward. When the music finished, dozens of colorful balloons soared into the sky. "What did you name him?" Adrian asked, examining the boy by lifting the edge of the envelope. "Taylor," Olivia answered. "Taylor Swan." Adrian looked at her. At that moment, there was so much happiness and tenderness on Olivia's face that he couldn't resist hugging her. The driver with his camera jumped up in time to take a wonderful picture.
Olivia hadn't been able to reach Mel because she'd been out. She was in the hospital, the same hospital where Olivia had given birth, but 1 floor up, in the pathology department. "What's going on outside?" she asked her roommate when she heard the music. Mel couldn't get up and walk to the window. She had just been given an IV.
Some of the young mothers are met by a happy and loving daddy, replied a neighbor in the ward, who was sitting on the windowsill and watching what was happening in the yard. "What, with an orchestra?" Mel wondered.
Hey, musicians, balloons, flowers. A happy woman who has such a husband. He'll probably carry her in his arms and give her child the best," she sighed, stroking her bulging belly.
Where do men like that come from, Mel thought, thinking that Adrian would never do such a thing. All he wanted to do was dive into bed with her, enjoy himself like a young stallion, and not care what happened afterward. Mel didn't dare to tell Adrian that she was pregnant for a long time. She had relationships with different guys, but she always took care that there were no surprises and took birth control pills. But apparently she somehow managed to skip taking the pills, and one day a pregnancy test gave her a positive result. Damn it. She threw the test in the trash can in frustration. We have to solve this problem right away. She dialed the number of her friend who could help and arrange an abortion, but she didn't answer. Mel decided she would call later. Toward evening, Adrian called to say that he would be coming to see her tonight. He entered the hallway at 8 o'clock sharp. Mel's small apartment was instantly fragrant with the scent of expensive, refined perfume.
Did you miss me, my little hen? Adrian grabbed the girl by the waist and pulled her tightly against him. Missed you, of course, she said, smiling. You don't come so often lately. You've forgotten all about me. You'll forget you. The boy dragged her to bed, tearing off Mel's silk robe and underwear as he went.
Throwing her on the bed, he unzipped his pants. Take off your clothes properly, Mel said, panting with excitement and passion, but Adrian was on top of her, growling like a wild animal and roughly overpowering her again and again. When he shuddered and groaned and collapsed, pressing her into the soft, springy mattress, she whispered.
Why so rude? A tear rolled down Mel's cheek. She was hurt that Adrian had acted like a street whore, like he'd raped her.
He rolled over onto his back, adjusted his pillow, and said quietly, I'm sorry, something came up. Give me a cigarette. Mel reached for the pack.
Are you in trouble? She asked. The girl had already gotten to know Adrian's character very well. Sometimes he was rude to her, but more often he came to relax in her arms and complain about his unloved job, his failed military career, his overbearing father who decided everything for him.
No, Adrian replied. It's fine. I have something to tell you. Mel decided to tell Adrian that she was pregnant. There was a faint hope in her soul that the guy would want a child and marry her, or at least that they would raise the baby together. She agreed to it even without a wedding, without a stamp in her passport. Adrian took a drag on his cigarette and released a cloud of blue smoke from his mouth.
I just found out today, ... I'm pregnant. Well done, you've created a problem for yourself. Now you'll solve it, the guy said indifferently.
You got me pregnant. Mel rolled over onto her stomach and looked into his eyes.
Adrian was quiet for a moment, finished and put the cigarette out on the ashtray, then stood up and pulled on his pants.
Mel, I'm not a child and neither are you, he said, and the girl felt the metallic tones in his voice. You and I both know what we have in common. I never promised you anything, and I certainly never dreamed of having children with you. Adrian, but it happened. I didn't do it on purpose. She got it. The guy was buttoning his shirt. And how do you know it's me who got it, and not the other men you've been screwing around with?
Adrian, how can you do this?
Why? You think it's a secret to me that it's not just me you're spreading your legs in this bed? You're a whore, Mel. You're just a painted, brainless whore. You think anyone would want to have children with you? I can't even imagine you as a mother. What can you give your children?
I don't understand why you're doing this to me. I just wanted to tell you the news, because we have to decide what to do together. Mel got up from the bed and put her arm around Adrian's shoulders. I'm not forcing myself or this baby on you. I'll have an abortion and that's it. Just don't leave me. Adrian pushed her away, pulled several large bills out of his wallet and tossed them on the nightstand.
There should be enough here, he said, and walked out of the bedroom. A second later, Mel heard the door slam shut in the hallway. What an asshole, she thought, picked up her phone and dialed the number of the grocery delivery phone.
Hello, I'll have a pizza and a bottle of whiskey. Write down the address.
Adrian brought Olivia and the baby home. A security guard followed them up to the 4th floor of the girl's apartment, carrying heavy bags. Olivia was completely immersed in her thoughts. Even though she was happy, she had a lot of problems to solve: paperwork for her allowance, a call to the pediatric clinic, and a graduation coming up. Is she asleep? Adrian asked as Olivia entered the kitchen. He was taking groceries out of the bags and putting them in the refrigerator. I've got a lot of stuff here, so I figured I'd have enough for a while, and then I'd bring you whatever you want. I also bought some baby stuff. I didn't know what I'd need. Olivia glanced at the bags of diapers, onesies, bottles. Thank you. You're a big help. It's because I love you ... and your baby, Adrian said softly. The girl looked up at him. It seemed to her that Adrian was different now, different from before. Serious or something. Olivia, trust me, it's going to be hard for you to raise a baby on your own. And I'll do anything for you. I've liked you since the first time I met you at the bus stop when we went on that picnic. But I couldn't tell you then. You realize. Adrian, you're kind, caring, sweet. I don't know what I'd do without you. But you know I don't love you.
It doesn't matter, as long as I love you. You'll never, ever regret believing me. I'm begging you, let's get married. I'll be a good father to Taylor. His father, as Kieran Olivia looked out the window and watched the children playing in the yard. Taylor would grow up to build sand towers in the sandbox.
It's sad and painful, but Kieran will never see his son. I can keep his memory alive, always telling Taylor what a hero his father is. And maybe you and I can still give Taylor a little brother or sister.
Feeling him come up behind her and touch her shoulder, Olivia turned, looking intently into Adrian's eyes.
What about Mel? The girl asked. What will she say when she finds out? Mel and I had never had anything serious, just meetings for fun. Neither she nor I ever loved each other. And anyway, Mel wasn't made to be a wife and mother, and you're different. A baby cried from the room. Olivia hurried to the baby, and Adrian sat down at the table and thought. It seemed to him that Olivia was about to agree to his proposal. They got married. They decided not to have a wedding or a big party, which upset Adrian's parents very much. But he was firm in his decision. We have a young son, no time for weddings, Adrian said as he cut off to his parents. For a year, they'd been adjusting to each other. Adrian went out of his way to do everything for Olivia and Taylor. He bought expensive gifts and jewelry for his wife and toys for Taylor. Olivia saw her husband's efforts and was grateful, but every day she noticed more and more how much Taylor looked like Kieran. He had the same eyes, hair, even a smile. The girl never forgot her lover. Adrian saw it all, felt it all, and hoped that time would heal the wound and cover with the dust of oblivion the memories of his wife about Taylor's father. Olivia was walking with her son in the park one day. Taylor sat in his stroller, gazing around. He had a cookie in his hand. Olivia rolled the stroller down the alley. The girl came to this park often. There was no traffic noise, birds were singing, and she could always talk to other moms, just like her, walking with strollers. Suddenly, a tall, slender girl caught her attention. She staggered down the alley, sometimes falling, struggling to get up and walking again. Olivia quickened her pace a little. "Young lady, are you ill?" she shouted, approaching the stranger. And she collapsed back onto the paving stones, leaned on her arm and tried to get up. "Come on, I'll help you." Olivia held out her hand to the girl, and when she looked up, she recognized the stranger as her old friend. "Mel, what's the matter with you?" Olivia exclaimed in surprise. She helped her friend up, sat her down on a bench, and rolled the stroller with Taylor closer. Her friend was drunk. Her hair was strewn over her shoulders. Her clothes were dirty, and an arrow was crawling down her leg in black capron stockings. Mel recognized Olivia, looking at her with a hazy stare that reeked of alcohol. "You look good." "Thank you, Mel," Olivia said. "Why are you here like that? What happened to you?" "And a lot of things happened to me." Mel burst into a coarse, drunken laughter. "And you, and your Kieran, and my Adrian. A lot has happened to all of us." "What do you mean?" Olivia didn't understand. "Mel, are you sick? Do you need help?" "Help?" The girl opened her purse and pulled out a pack of cigarettes. She turned to Olivia and squinted her eyes. "You're the one who needs help, living in a fog and not noticing anything around you." "What are you talking about? Wake up, Mel, we were friends." "And I'm not friends with traitors. You betrayed everyone, me, Kieran. You know how bad I felt when you started living with Adrian. And you know how bad Kieran felt when you wouldn't even let him look at his son." What the hell are you talking about? Olivia didn't understand what her former friend was trying to accuse her of. Do you have any money? Mel asked her suddenly. There's a card, replied Olivia. Let's go. Mel struggled to get up from the bench and walk down the alley. Olivia followed her, rolling the stroller with her son in front of her, not wanting to let her go until she explained everything and told her about herself. They reached the nearest supermarket. Give me the money, Mel said. Olivia handed her a bank card. Her friend entered the store and came out a short time later holding a bottle of alcohol. Soon they were sitting in the kitchen of Mel's apartment. Olivia was amazed at how messy the rooms were. There were things scattered everywhere, bottles, dirty dishes in the sink, and an ashtray full of cigarette butts on the windowsill. Mel took a glass and poured herself from the bottle. I'm not offering you one. I know you won't, she muttered and raised her glass. Cheers. How did you come to this, Mel? Rolled and rolled and rolled and rolled and rolled. And you helped me ruin my life with Adrian. He told me you didn't have anything. Olivia tried to justify herself. Well, of course, there's nothing but 2 kids. What kids? Olivia thought Mel had gotten drunk and was talking nonsense. But her friend got up from her chair and shuffled to her room, her torn tights shuffling across the floor. When she returned, she placed a photograph in front of Olivia. It showed 2 babies. They looked no more than 3 or 4 months old. This is Ciara and Vincent. And their father Adrian, pointing her finger at the picture. Mel said, my children, the twins. Olivia looked at the faces of the babies in surprise. They were lying on the beautiful blanket next to each other, looking exactly alike. You had a baby with Adrian. When? Olivia exclaimed in bewilderment. Only 6 months ago, and that asshole didn't recognize the kids, and I had my parental rights revoked. With his connections, he made a quick deal and put the kids in an orphanage. Everything she'd heard from Mel seemed unbelievably crazy to Olivia. Adrian couldn't do that. Yes, he had connections, he could do a lot of things, but putting his children in an orphanage. And then he wanted to kill me. He got me drunk and tried to strangle me, but Kieran wouldn't let him. He hit him so hard. Mel laughed, her laughter sounding unnatural, theatrical. Kieran, who? What are you talking about? I don't understand anything, Olivia said, and stopped drinking. She took the glass from her friend, catching an angry look. Your Kieran punched him. Adrian was choking me and he punched him in the face. Mel, wake up. Kieran died on a military trip. No, he didn't. And he saw you. Where? I beg you, pull yourself together and tell me everything in detail. It turned out that Kieran was back, and the first thing he did was to stop by his friend's house. As he approached the driveway, he saw Olivia and Adrian come out of the door. The guy had a small child in his arms. They smiled at each other, talked about something, and then got into the car and drove away. A few days later, Kieran decided to find out about Olivia and Adrian from Mel. He went to her house, knocked on the door, but no one opened it. In his heart, the guy banged on the door. It was unlocked. Entering, he heard the sounds of a struggle, ran into the bedroom where Adrian was choking Mel. Kieran punched him and pulled him away from the gasping girl. Ah, he's back. Adrian, recognizing his old friend at once, said, Hero, now you're going to get your rights, but your Olivia is no longer yours. She's my wife and we have a son growing up. Adrian pulled his passport out of his pocket and took out the picture that had been taken when he was discharged from the hospital. Olivia was smiling from the photo, and the boy was holding a newborn baby in his arms. As she listened to her friend's story, Olivia could hardly believe what was happening. It turned out that Kieran was not dead, as Adrian had told her. He was alive and knew nothing about his little son. Give me a glass, Mel asked quietly, calming down. I need a drink. Olivia moved the glass, watched silently as her friend poured the liquor into it, and then asked,
Why didn't you tell me?
Don't you understand? I hated you with all my soul. Where's Kieran now? He's probably gone. Who knows where he is? Mel waved her hand uncertainly.
Why didn't he come to me, but went to Adrian first? He didn't mention it.
Nope, the girl shook her head, pouring herself another. I understand him, though. He's so handsome, proud, strong, and he'll come to you one-armed. What do you mean, one-armed? Olivia didn't understand anything at all. Everything Mel was telling her could have been the plot of a stupid show, like so many shows on TV nowadays. But it couldn't have happened in real life. And his arm was torn off on a business trip, Mel said, collapsed her head on the table and snored. The girl fell into a dead, drunken sleep. Returning home, Olivia wondered how to go on with her life. On the one hand, she has a strong family, a caring husband, a favorite son. On the other hand, Kieran, as it turned out, is alive, and he thinks that Olivia left him, preferring to live with Adrian. She was hurt that he hadn't made himself known, hadn't come to see her, but had appeared in front of Mel and a former friend. All day, thinking about how to live on, she decided that she would not change anything in her life. But Mila should be helped. 3 years had passed. Olivia and Adrian lived in a spacious apartment and raised Taylor together. The baby was growing up to be a very bright, active boy, constantly demanding attention. Olivia spent the whole day dealing with her son, and in the evening waited for her husband from work. Sometimes, looking out the window as he drove up to the entrance and parked the car in the yard, she thought that more caring than Adrian husband could not find. He spent all his free time with his wife and son, and last year they flew to Italy together. The doctors said it was good for the boy to breathe the healing air. For his 3rd birthday, Adrian gave Taylor a huge battery-powered car. The boy wasn't very good with the car, but he squealed with delight when his dad helped him steer it and race it down the long hallway. The whole family gathered to celebrate Taylor's birthday. Adrian's parents treated Olivia and her son calmly, not complaining, but every chance they got they had the pleasure of reminding her that she was an orphan and a dependent. Olivia didn't like it, and Adrian just waved it off, saying, "Never mind." Her husband's older sister often reproached Olivia for running around with her son like a piece of paper, and Adriana still hadn't given birth. As she set the table for the party, Olivia thought she would have to endure the reproaches, taunts, and sarcastic phrases directed at her again. Lately, she'd noticed more and more that Adrian himself was bringing up topics that insulted and offended his wife. Why he did so, she did not understand. When they were alone, more caring and affectionate Adrian could not imagine anyone. But in the presence of people who were strangers to Olivia, he always found something to pick on. And this time he was out of line. Olivia's taunts amused her in-laws. Everyone at the table seemed to be having fun except her. "Adrian, stop it. I feel bad," Olivia tried to stop her husband. But he went on. Then the girl could not stand it. Trying to appear calm, she smiled and said softly but very clearly, "The other day I went to the orphanage where your children live, honey. I looked at them, brought gifts and toys. You know, they're so cute. Why don't we take them for the weekend? The principal said it's possible." Adrian put his fork on the table silently, then slapped Olivia, grabbed her by the hair, and dragged her out of the room. The family stared at them, uncomprehending. "You've scraped it all together, daughter-in-law, on your own head," said the mother-in-law sneeringly. The guests continued to eat as if nothing had happened, placing appetizers and salads on their plates. "Mom, what kids did Olivia say Olivia was talking about?" Sister Adrian suddenly asked. "Who knows who she is? She's got some nonsense in her head, so she's just saying whatever she wants. Andriusha only has Taylor." In the kitchen, Olivia wheezed, trying to free herself from her husband's strong, clinging fingers, which squeezed her neck. Adrian pinned her against the refrigerator and hissed, trying to keep his voice low so the family wouldn't hear. "Who do you think you are? You think you can tell my parents and sister whatever you want? Let go or I'll scream. I know all about you and Mel, about how you put your own children in an orphanage and stripped her of her maternal rights. About how you've been lying to me all these years. Shut up. Have you forgotten the swamp and poverty I pulled you out of? What would you be blaming your bastard for if it wasn't for me? My son is not a degenerate. He has a father and he's alive. That's something to remember. You should be grateful to me for the rest of your life. You've been living like a cheese and butter. Let go or I'll tell your parents." Adrian looked into her eyes with anger. He loosened his grip and finally let go of Olivia. She sat on the stool, rubbing her neck where her husband's fingers had left marks. "How could you? You acted like a monster." "It's none of your business. Mel's a whore. I never loved her. And the fact that I gave birth to her is something you have to prove." Already, Olivia said quietly. "What?" Adrian didn't understand what his wife meant. "It's already been proven. Mel and I ordered a paternity test. Vincent and Ciara are your children. They're your blood twins. What kind of monster are you to throw your own babies out of your life? How could you deprive them of their mother? People like Mel can't be normal mothers. She's a slut and an alcoholic." "What are you talking about? Didn't you do everything you could to make her drink? Didn't you want to kill her?" "Kieran's a witness. He'll testify that you strangled my friend to get rid of her." "You can't prove anything." Suddenly, Adrian's eyes were aflame. No one would believe a degenerate alcoholic who'd been deprived of her parental rights.
"You're wrong. Mel has been in treatment and hasn't been drinking alcohol for a long time," Olivia said triumphantly. "She and I are almost finished with all the necessary paperwork. Soon she'll have her children back and she'll be happy. And I'm leaving you right now. I've had enough."
"Stop!" Adrian grabbed her hand and gripped the girl's wrist tightly with his fingers. "Do you still want your relatives to know?" Olivia looked boldly into his eyes, determined to tell her parents-in-law what their favorite son was really like. The guy let go of her hand, lowered his head. "Go away and never come into my life again," was all he said. On a May morning, Olivia and Mel were picking up the children from the orphanage. Vincent and Ciara were all dressed up. Mel had bought them nice suits and shoes, and she was getting excited. The day before, she and Olivia had cleaned up the apartment, setting up the nursery in Mel's former bedroom. Now there was a bunk bed, a closet full of children's things, and a large basket of toys. Mila had a very difficult time. When she learned what had happened in her life, Olivia began to visit her friend whenever she could get away from home. When she went for a walk with her son, she bought food to feed Milka, but she kept demanding alcohol. But long conversations, convincing her that only by stopping drinking, she could get her children back, did the trick. Mel agreed to treatment. For 2 months, she was in a private specialized institution, where Olivia paid for her treatment. When Mel was discharged, she didn't look like the cheerful, mischievous, flighty girl her friend had known her to be. Something was broken inside her. She kept thinking about the children, berating herself for the mistake she'd made in her life by letting Adrian send them to an orphanage. Olivia, on the other hand, convinced her every time that everything could still be brought back. She did everything she could to get Mel the twins. And so today they would settle into this room with new baby wallpaper and a big fluffy rug on the floor. Looking around the room, pleased that everything was working out so well, Mel said, "Thank you, Olivia, and I'm sorry if I hurt you in any way." "Don't thank me, we're friends." "It'll be okay," Olivia hugged her friend, who had recently been ready to fall into the abyss, to lose the most important thing in a mother's life, her children. "Mommy, will they let me play with toys?" Olivia asked Taylor. The girls laughed. "Of course they will," they replied almost in unison.
"Well, shall we go?" Mel said. "We have to pick up some more cake and brownies."
Mel was happy that in just a few hours her apartment would be filled with children's laughter and happiness.
Walking home from Mel's, Olivia held Taylor's hand. They walked down the park alley that led to Olivia's house. The girl wondered how life might have turned out if she hadn't met Kieran in that park one day. Yes, she had been through a lot, but looking at the boy walking beside her, holding her hand tightly, Olivia was happy.
"What do you think of Ciara and Vincent?" she asked Taylor. "Good ones. Why were they living in an orphanage? They have a mom, Aunt Mel." "It happens," Kid Olivia answered uncertainly. Taylor was a bright boy and understood a lot of things, but she thought it was hard to explain to a child why children were abandoned by their parents. When he grew up, he'd understand. After Olivia packed her bags and left Adrian on her son's birthday, his relatives repeatedly called her and threatened to take Taylor away. Her husband never dared to admit to his parents that Taylor wasn't his son. Well, then Olivia had to tell them herself. Tired of listening to the threats, she did just that. Taylor is not Adrian's son or your grandson, she told her mother-in-law. So leave us alone and don't call again. Adrian's mother yelled something else into the phone, that she would sue, take a DNA test, take the baby away from Olivia, but she just hung up. Olivia wanted nothing more to do with those people. Tomorrow she would take Vanya to Mila's. Her friend promised to stay with him for a couple of hours while Olivia was at the interview. The girl was going to get a job at the gymnasium. If everything went as Olivia planned, Taylor, as a child of an education worker, would be given a place in kindergarten. Life was getting better. As she thought about it, Olivia walked leisurely down the alley, holding her son's hand. Taylor snatched his hand out of hers and ran down the path. "Taylor, where are you going?" Olivia shouted after her. But the boy ran and ran. He saw a beautiful butterfly and rushed after it. Suddenly, the child stumbled and fell with all his might on the paving stone path. Olivia rushed to her son's aid. She saw a strange man come to the child, lift him up and put him on his feet. "Son, you're all right," she ran over to the boy and squatted down to examine the wound on his knee, which was visible through his torn pants. "How could it be? How many times have I told you not to run?" She suddenly realized that a man had helped the boy up and thanked him without even looking in his direction. "Thank you so much for helping my son." "You're welcome, because that's my son too. How you doing, fighter?" Olivia slowly raised her eyes to the stranger who had come to her child's rescue. Her heart was pounding frantically. She stood up, not taking her eyes off his face. Kieran looked at her with the same kind, loving velvet eyes. "Hello, Olivia," he said quietly. "I've been waiting for you here for a long time." Kieran love Olivia couldn't believe her eyes. Taylor's father was standing in front of her, the man she loved most in her life. "I thought I'd never see you again. I thought you'd never come back." "How could I not come back? I promised you, remember? I promised you there, at the campground, surrounded by centuries-old pines, in our cabin, where we loved each other so much." "I remember everything, and I never forgot," Olivia said quietly. "Let's go home." The three of them walked down the park alley toward the exit. Kieran held his son with one hand. But Olivia didn't care that her boy's father had come back crippled. The important thing was that now they would always be together.